Two Mics live from New York City on Talk Sport.
Good evening, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the Two Mics on Talk Sport live from New York City. We're here on another explosive weekend for Premier League football. Bournemouth have finally won a game, as I predicted, but it's bad news for Roy Hodgson and Crystal Palace. We'll tell you why. Meanwhile, things are going from bad to worse at Porky's beloved Everton. Ronald Koeman is proving to be a severely underwhelming manager, despite what was regarded as an excellent transfer window. And after another disappointing performance against Atalanta in the Europa League, they've now got Manchester United on Sunday. It's going to be brutal. We're going to talk to a New York Everton fan. 08717 22 33 44. Plus, we spent the morning at Strawberry Fields on Central Park. We've witnessed the ghouls at the Dakota, and I've been reunited with my 93-year-old mother for lunch. It's all happening ahead of our live show in Manhattan tomorrow afternoon. Also coming up on the show, we've got Porky Vision, the best TV review this side of Kenny Bunkport. We'll give you all the news from tonight's front and back pages as well. You're listening to the Two Mics live from New York on Talk Sport. Doesn't that give you like a warm, fuzzy feeling? That kind of piano bar music?
Well, you say that, but I've been getting rather warm over the last 2 days. A bit warmer than I'd like to be.
Well, because the weather's lovely here.
Well, it's not lovely. It's impressively hot, you know. You see, the problem is with Manhattan, if people don't understand it, it's got so many huge buildings, right, that what happens is... We've
seen some nice new ones as well, haven't we?
Well, I've seen that one that's just like a Lego building.
Yeah.
It's just a
square
I
had
that
a
goes
word
up and
with
up
somebody
and up.
who knows these things.
Jack and the Beanstalk.
Do you know who's built that one?
Who?
The Russians.
The Russians, yeah, well, wouldn't surprise me, would it?
Yeah.
They have ways of building. Yeah, that's the Germans, actually, yeah. Yes, that's right. No, what I was going to say...
Try and keep it clean, by the way.
Yeah, I will.
Even though they have very few regulations in the United States of America when it comes to free speech, we're still bound by Ofcom and, of course, all the rules that come with that.
Well, that goes without saying. Yeah. I hope you will remember that.
So keep it clean.
Now, what I was going to say is that because Manhattan is so full of... It's only 12 miles long and 2 miles wide, Manhattan, right? But it's got so many huge buildings with so many bricks in them that when the sun comes out like this, those bricks all absorb the heat.
Yes.
In the old days, they used to have these heaters in like semi-detached houses, which were...
Heaters?
They had like these thermos heaters.
Thermos.
And what happened was they heated up overnight because the electricity was cheaper.
Are you talking about those things that you have like...
Full of blocks.
Like blocks?
Yeah.
I've got those in my apartment in London.
Full of bricks.
Yeah,
that's
storage
right,
heaters they're called.
Yeah, well, they're storage heaters, I suppose, but they were called thermos heaters because they take in cheap electricity at night and they throw it out during the day. Yeah. Well, Manhattan's the opposite. Manhattan takes in very, very hot temperatures during the day.
Very, very hot. Why are you impersonating Roy Hodgson since the early stage of the show?
I'm not, and I'm not having you to point out things about people's character which are unnecessarily unkind.
Do you think he's under very, very much pressure at the moment?
Well, I'm sure he is, but let me explain to you about Manhattan first.
Can you get on with it, please? We've got lots of important stuff to talk about.
And then what happens is the heat is then thrown out throughout the night, so you get no respite from it whatsoever.
Right, indeed.
And then 80 degrees comes again
the
next day.
But the great thing about here, and we've got it here in this lovely air-conditioned studio, is air conditioning. They understand air conditioning in America in a way that we do not.
Oh, they do. In my hotel...
Nowhere where you go in London can you get air conditioning.
No, they don't moan about the cost of it either, because in my hotel, it pumps out all day. It doesn't matter what time you go into your room.
When you say your hotel, we're also staying there together.
Yes.
It's in the same hotel I'm in.
Yes, that's right.
So why don't you say our hotel?
Well,
the trouble with you is you're just single-mindedly selfish.
No, I don't know what the arrangement is in your room, because I haven't been in it. I'm talking about in my room, the air conditioning comes out all day. And
it's still our hotel, though.
Well, it may be our hotel, but it's my room. Okay. And I don't know why you're getting so pernickety about little things like this.
I just like to be exact.
You know, you've been a little bit off today, but I'll forgive you for that, because I think you're stressed out and tense about tomorrow's show.
No, not at all.
Anyway, poor old Roy Hodgson.
Is
now going to have to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Yeah, because he's now the manager of the only team in the Premier League that have nil points. No points, absolutely zero.
Yeah, absolutely nothing. And you understand I think it's a rather good way of describing it, isn't it? He's Atlas, because he's carrying the rest of the Premier League on his shoulders. I don't mind that at all. And also, you know when you see a cartoon and some poor chap gets a 12-ton brick dropped on his head.
Yes.
And he's squashed flat.
Yes.
That's how Roy Hodgson is at the moment,
That's a little bit violent for my taste.
Well, it's a bit violent, but it's an analogy about where he is.
Yeah.
So he's really got to get going. And,
is he capable of getting going? That's the question.
Well, that's a very good question.
And you know what the question is that we should be asking? Because there will be Brighton fans that are disappointed that they went to Bournemouth and didn't get a result.
Yes.
We quite like to hear from Brighton fans, but actually, in a way, Brighton fans have got nothing to say to us. I really don't think that they've got a very, very sort of interesting story to tell. They've gone slightly west on the coast. They've gone all the way down to Bournemouth. Eddie Howe, who has been previously linked with the England job, people thought he was actually rather a good manager. He's had a terrible start to the season. He is, of course, now the owner of 3 points, which means they've bumped themselves up above Crystal Palace. I'd rather hear from Crystal Palace fans, who must be absolutely beside themselves with rage, that Roy Hodgson, a man who is at least 70 years of age, looks as if he's about 170, has been put in charge of their team.
You see, I think you're being gratuitously rather rude to,
I disagree.
To Mr. Hodgson.
I heard him being interviewed, on a radio show on TalkSport not long ago. He was asked about his England record. He said that he was very proud of it because they won 56 games and only lost 7. The problem is, the 7 they lost were in a very important tournament.
Yeah, they were, including Cup, against Iceland.
Including the World Cup in Brazil, where they didn't win a game, and including the Euros in France last year, where they didn't manage to beat Iceland.
Yes, that's right.
Okay?
I totally agree with you.
So the man is, to me, not fit to run a Premier League football club.
Well, the thing is, as well, he's had other managerial appointments which have tested his ability to run a Premier League football club. One of them was at Liverpool. Now, he only lasted half a season at Liverpool because it was too big a job for him. Now, the point is, Crystal Palace are not as big a club as Liverpool, but they need a bigger job doing than Liverpool needed then.
And they're currently propping up the Premier League with no points, right? Let me read you their statistics.
I don't think
Played
Mr. Hodgson
4,
is up to it.
Okay? Lost 4. Goals 4, 0. Goals against 7. Goal difference -7. They haven't even scored a goal.
No, they haven't even
Never
scored a
mind
goal.
actually getting a point.
But the point is, I think that Mr. Hodgson will be quite pleased. Don't worry about the time. Mr. Hodgson will be quite pleased that he is actually kicking off the Premier League fixture list tomorrow. I know it's kicked off for the weekend tonight.
It's already kicked off.
I said tomorrow.
No, I know.
I said he's kicking off tomorrow, right? Because it's 12:30.
But it's kicked off tonight, hasn't it, with Bournemouth and Brighton?
If you'd have listened to me, I said the Premier League tomorrow.
About.
I said that the Premier League fixture list tomorrow, he's kicking it off. You all right?
I know, no, I'm fine.
Understanding what's going on?
No, I am. The only problem for you is that Everton doing so badly, you're starting to let it affect your judgment.
No, not at all.
We'll talk about that later.
Everton is so disappointing. It's
really sad.
Difficult to explain.
Very sad.
To go to Atalanta and suddenly find that we're 3-0 down by
I don't even know where Atalanta is.
Well, you don't need to, do you? I didn't go there because obviously I was here. But had I gone there, I'd have been miserable. And
the man from Atalanta.
Yeah, the only game I ever left that Everton were playing in was against Chelsea when we were 5-0 down with 10 minutes to go, and I left.
That wasn't good.
I could have seen myself in a similar position at Atalanta.
We've got a good conversation coming up with an Everton fan who's based here in New York City, which we'll talk about. But anyway, tell me about Crystal Palace kicking it all off tomorrow.
Well, they're kicking it off because it's kicking off at 12:30, so it's Crystal Palace Southampton. Now, the point is, Southampton themselves are struggling a bit. Where can Mr. Hodgson bring inspiration into the Crystal Palace team, who've had 4 now appalling games? I don't know if he can, because he's only been there 3 days.
But actually, you say that. The last game they had, they played all right. They weren't able to score a goal, but actually they didn't do too badly.
They had 68% of play.
Yeah, the result of the game was perhaps not as fair as it should have been. But they couldn't get a point. They lost the game, and poor old Frank de Boer got dispatched after 4. He's now the shortest ever Premier League manager after being there for only 4 games. What I'd like you to do is to please give out the non-mangled-mouthed version of the phone number, because we want to hear from Crystal Palace fans about Roy Hodgson, what he's going to do, how he's going to change the way that Crystal Palace have been operating, how on earth he's going to make Crystal Palace's fortunes turn around when they are now the only team with no points, no goals, no hope.
Absolutely.
Tell me.
I'm going to let you do it.
OK, it is 08717 22 333 444. We want to
8717 22 333 444.
That's exactly what it is, and we would like you to call us because there's a lot to talk about here if you're a Crystal Palace fan. If you are on your way back from Bournemouth and you happen to be a Brighton fan, by all means give us a call. But I'm afraid Brighton have already won a game. Brighton have already got now 4 points because they drew one as well. So they're already 4 points ahead of Crystal Palace. They are already way far and ahead away from the zone of pain. But Crystal Palace have got Roy Hodgson in charge. I can't believe it. I can't believe anyone at Crystal Palace thinks this is a great idea.
The American investors apparently wanted him before De Boer.
It's incredible to me.
It is incredible
and
to me.
And we are in America, and it's all very well to say that Americans understand business, but maybe they don't understand football. Well, if they think that Roy Hodgson, because he was England manager, is the answer, He's just not the answer.
You've got to remember that when Alan Pardew, who's also a former Crystal Palace manager, made a comment like that about Americans understanding football, he didn't last very long in the game.
They didn't like it.
He didn't last very long in the job.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely right. So, we want to hear from you, please. Crystal Palace fans, 08717 223344. Coming up later on, we've got Porky Vision, the best TV review this side of Kenny Bunkport, as we said earlier. We're going to be talking Everton as well. We've got an Everton fan coming on from this side of the Atlantic. And, of course, we're going to be doing all kinds of other stuff as well, including talking to our man on the West Coast with all the Hollywood gossip too. This is TalkSport.
Start spreading the news.
I believe the team will stay up, absolutely. I wouldn't have dreamt of taking the job if I didn't believe that the team could stay up, and that I didn't believe that I and my coaching staff would be the right people to do that. Once the chairman made it clear that he thought that we were the right people, then for me there's never been a doubt in my mind. And as I say, this could be a very good year, because if it ends up this season with us still in the Premiership and the Crystal Palace fans happy, then that will be something which will make me very happy.
I want to wake up in a city that doesn't
Now,
sleep.
there isn't a sort of temptation to sing along with that, but we probably won't do that right now. We may do it tomorrow when we do the live show at the City Winery. That may happen.
Yeah, well, may. Have you ever been to Croydon?
Yes.
Because Croydon was once called the English Manhattan.
Was it?
Yes,
By
it
who?
was. Well, I don't know.
Maniac.
Well, no, I think...
By the way, not only have I been to Croydon, I've been there with you.
Yes, have
We've
you?
been to Crystal Palace together.
Oh, yeah, we have.
On several occasions.
Yeah. We come out of East Croydon
we normally
Station.
take the train to East Croydon Station.
That's right, yeah. But, I mean, what I'm saying is, you ever spent time in Croydon? Because,
it's ghastly. It's about as much like Manhattan as, I would say, a Quorn burger is like some veal escalope.
Well, what have you...
Sorry.
Yeah, that's a rather strange sort of comparison. But Nestle moved in there and built a big tower block, right?
Oh,
Nestle being
hideous,
the
though,
Swiss... What?
The tower block in Croydon's hideous, isn't it?
Not really. No, I think it's okay.
No, it's
and then over recent years, East Croydon was sort of the place where you lived if you wanted to have a smartish type of dress.
Oh, yeah.
And West Croydon was actually pretty naff.
I'm sorry, I can't buy that you would ever want to live in any part of Croydon.
But West Croydon has now had like a number of blocks of flats built there, and it is starting to look a bit like a sort of mini, not Manhattan, but I mean a sort of mini.
I know what you mean.
Canary Wharf.
It's more like a sort of Roosevelt Island thing. Which is what I'm concerned
But anyway, that's the only thing, the only similarity between where Roy Hodgson is and where we are. Is
what would you say if I said to you
the
comparison between Manhattan and Croydon is similar to the Manhattan, as in Jose Mourinho, the manager of Manchester United, and Roy Hodgson, the manager of Crystal Palace?
Well, you see, again, I think you're being a little bit unkind to Mr. Hodgson. I don't think he can keep Palace up under any circumstances because when Sam Allardyce takes on a team and keeps them up, like he did with Palace, like he did with Sunderland, Sam Allardyce is an absolute realist who looks at the situation with grit and determination and common sense. He puts the team right, but it takes usually nearly the whole season to do it.
Right.
And I don't think Roy Hodgson can do that.
And it's not always pretty. And we've heard Roy Hodgson speaking just there, and we're about to talk to a blogger from Crystal Palace, of course, who's going to give us his view of what he thinks is going to happen. But at the end of the day, the problem is he has basically said that the aim for Crystal Palace, for him, is to keep them up. Now, it just seems to me to be an extraordinary state of affairs that that's where they suddenly are. Yeah. Now, Jay Crane is a blogger for eaglesbeak.com.
That's right.
Let's hear from him what he thinks of Roy Hodgson, because Paul Matthews has tweeted us at the two mics, and he says, if Roy Hodgson is the answer, what the hell was the question?
That's good.
And it is a good way to start. Jay, a very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. Is it all desperately sad for Crystal Palace or what?
Hello, chaps. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it is a bit. It's been a terrible start. The gamble of bringing in Frank de Boer clearly hasn't paid off. 4 games in, 4 losses, no goals. A bit of a shambles, really, to start with. But a decision's been made to bring in Roy Hodgson, so we'll see what he can do.
Do you know what I find a bit odd about Mr. Hodgson, Jay? And I'm sure how well you know him, how well you've charted his career so far. But Roy Hodgson thinks a lot of it is about him. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because Jose Mourinho thinks an awful lot of what he does is about him when he works at football clubs. But when Mr. Hodgson issues a statement like he did, and we just heard him talking, saying, you know, if he keeps Crystal Palace up, that will make him very happy. Why are you fans interested whether or not he's happy or not? His job is to keep you in the Premier League. That shouldn't make him happy because he's got a hell of a lot of hard work to get through between now and keeping you in the Premier League. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not sure he's got the right perspective on the job ahead.
Completely agree, but he's not the first manager to have that kind of views about himself coming into Palace. I mean, Big Sam was very similar, a big. But
he was successful.
Big ideas. Yeah, no, I completely agree, and he had less time to save Palace, but we're in a bit of a predicament at the moment. So, he knows what he needs to do. Roy Hodgson has been brought in after 4 games, 4 losses. We're in a difficult position. We've got a good squad of players, there's no doubt about it, and he needs to get them working. He needs to get us playing like we have been before. And clearly, Frank de Boer's style wasn't working for us, and the players that he had available to him.
Yes. But you say that, and you have to feel a bit sorry, Jay, do you not, for Frank de Boer? Because to say Frank de Boer wasn't working, he had 4 games. I mean, I was told that he did not play the style in which he planned to play because people say when he was at Ajax, he never played 3 at the back. And I'm sorry to go on about tactics because, I mean, I'm sure Frank de Boer knows more about them than I do. But he always played, with 4-4-3 as his sort of default position when he was with Ajax. And when he came to Palace, it seems as though he was told, oh, no, we want to play this more expansive style of football. How can you say after 4 games that it's not working?
It's a difficult one because the Burnley game, I thought we battered Burnley on Sunday, and I thought it was a little bit of a surprise he went after that game because I think a lot of people thought he might have actually gone after the Swansea defeat, which 3 games in is probably even worse than 4. We played well against Burnley, and nobody can point a finger at the players for not playing for Frank de Boer because that game just proved that we were just extremely unlucky. Just one terrible mistake in that game, won the game for Burnley, but we battered them. We really did. And the style of football, a lot of people have said that the formation and the new tactics weren't working. But if you look at most of the goals we conceded so far this season, they've I think 80% of them have been bad defensive errors.
But Jay, what I think we've got to look at is you've got to look at the position of Mr. Parrish. Mr. Parrish, who is 1/3 owner, isn't he, and the guy who's still chairman and makes the decisions. Could he have afforded to go into a 5th game without any points? Because already, if you look at it statistically, Jay, Crystal Palace are going to have to hit promotion form between now and Christmas just to get above the relegation places because they've already shipped 12 points, right? If they shipped another 3 points, that's 15 points. 5 games in is not the start of the season anymore. It's only 38 games, remember, and you're getting towards 1/7 of the season. So you could not afford not to make a change.
I do think that the next run of fixtures had a big influence on the departure of Frank de Boer because we have Southampton on Saturday, then we've got 2 away trips in a row to Manchester, and then we've got Chelsea. That will be 8 games in. 8 games without a win is, we're in a bad predicament now, but if it went to 8 games without a win, that is just horrendous, and there'll almost be no coming back from that. So I think that had a huge impact on the decision to get rid of him.
And also, you have to say that Roy Hodgson is a man, whatever you may think of him, an awful lot, and we get an awful lot of tweets here from people saying, I want Crystal Palace to fail because of what Roy Hodgson did for England because he was such a disappointing manager for England. Yes. And despite what he may say that, we had 56 games, only lost 7, the fact that Jermaine Defoe has now scored a winner for Bournemouth, so Bournemouth have now got 3 points, they've now left Crystal Palace on their own. It's almost like there's some kind of a jinx on Roy Hodgson. When he took over, he wasn't the only team with no points. Now he is. So, the idea that he's suddenly going to be able to get out of that, I don't think anyone really believes it.
Yeah, and I think Sam Allardyce came into the club with a point to prove after what happened with England. Roy Hodgson is very similar. His last job was with England, so I'm hoping that he can do similar things for us. And I do think that Roy Hodgson has had a lot of bad press. It wasn't ideal for him for England. He did well with West Brom. He did very well with Fulham. Speaking to both those sets of fans, they really enjoyed his style of football at both those clubs, and he did well for both those clubs. I think a lot of people talk about negativity a lot with his spell at Liverpool, which don't think he stood much of a chance. England, wasn't that great, but talking to fans of West Brom and Fulham, who are similar kind of clubs to us, size-wise, and perhaps looking ahead to the future. So I'm hoping that he can do very similar for us as he did for them. I think
that's a very good point.
To the UEFA Cup final, didn't he? So
he made a very good point. He struggles with big tasks in football, Liverpool and England, but he feels more comfortable at more homely, more family, more comely clubs. You know what I mean? So. But the point that my colleague MG just made is a very pertinent one. For him to come in and say, I only lost 7 games for England, I mean, he's deluded, because those 7 games were the games that destroyed his reputation as an international manager. So he's either lost touch with reality, or he thinks all you Crystal Palace fans are complete dopes and juice heads because you don't realise the 7 games he did lose were the 7 most important games that he was in charge of England for.
Exactly, but I think England job's have been a poison chalice for years, hasn't it? You've got to admit that a lot of people have gone in and done
He's failed worse. He failed worse than most other managers.
Also, you're talking about poison chalices. How about a poison palace? Crystal Palace is now a poison chalice, isn't it?
Crystal Palace, the poison chalice.
Hey?
Very much so. But I think Roy Hodgson kind of follows a long list of managers that we've been relatively successful with. Look at Allardyce, Pardew, Pulis and Holloway. Same kind of type of British manager. So, looking at that viewpoint, it's kind of worked for us in the past. He's going to come in and get us playing back to how our normal style was before Frank de Boer came in, so fingers crossed.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm very, very, very sceptical, I have to say.
I'm very sceptical. I mean, is there a chance, Jay, he won't last the season?
After such an early change, in the season, I think he'll be, hopefully, it can't really get any worse from this point on, can it? 4 games in, no goals, no wins. So I would suggest that he's got the rest of the season, because I think it was Sunderland last year that made a change very early in the season. Yeah. So I think he's got it for the season, and I'm hopeful that he can do a job for us.
Well, I wish you the very best of luck, mate. It's the nearest Premiership club to me. I've got a friend there who normally invites me into the restaurant on match day when Everton are there. So, I do hope I'll see you down at the Palace again soon.
The only good reason for Everton to go to Palace is it might be some good news for Everton for a change. But listen, Jay.
That's dreadful.
Thank you very much indeed for that. I hope the blog goes well. We will be taking your calls coming up after this. We are the Two Mikes. We are live in Manhattan. Yeah. Do you want to give them the non-mangle mouth number?
Of course I do.
Please do.
08717
yes.
22 33 44. Give us a call. We're in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Even if it ain't all it seems, I got a pocket full of dreams, baby. I'm from New York, concrete jungle where dreams are made of. There's nothing you can't do. Now you're in New York. These streets will make you feel brand new. Big lights will inspire you. Hear it for New York.
Talk Sport, we are the Two Mikes. I have to say, we've got a couple of tweets coming in saying the only thing that Croydon has got in common with Manhattan is possibly the crime rate. When in fact there are more crimes committed in Croydon per capita than there are, of course, in New York City, which is where we are. We're going to take your calls in a moment. Peter says the New York intro does it every time. Here's one from Jim who says, could Roy Hodgson sound any less convincing? The legendary Porky Jinx may be the only hope for Palace. So what he's saying basically, because you've written them off, it may well mean that in fact
I just think it's an impossible task. I think it's an impossible task to rescue a team.
And you're right to say he's not the guy to do it.
He's not the guy to do it, I'm afraid. I mean, Sam Allardyce was. Sam Allardyce got a history of it. Sam Allardyce is earthy, gritty, realistic, rolls up his sleeves and gets on with it. But I always feel with Mr. Hodgson that he always thinks that he has a professorial sort of impact on people, and that, because he regards himself as a highly intelligent man, which I'm sure he is.
Do you know what I think as well? And I don't wish to do him any disservice. I think he's quite conceited.
I think he's conceited, and I think he thinks that because he has, a brain pattern which is perhaps a little elevated to the normal sort of footballer-type thinking
vogue. He thinks he's smarter than the average footballer.
Well, I think he thinks he is, and I think he thinks that he brings this, his superintelligence to a club, and that having superintelligence and a thinking pattern which is slightly elevated to the average footballer, he can get people out of problems. But the history proves that he can't.
No, exactly right. How about this from Donovan, who says, considering Roy couldn't beat Iceland, the club have trusted him to steer them out of the toughest league in the world. That's quite difficult. Now, you are known as Porky, and we have now the first caller for the show tonight, who's called Parky.
He
is Porky with an A. He's a Palace fan. He's in Croydon, which, of course, is the Manhattan of the South.
It is.
Parky, a very good evening to you, and welcome to the show.
Evening, chaps. I really enjoy the show.
That's very kind of you.
Something that's happened at Palace that no one's mentioned since Frank de Boer was there is we've had loads of injuries. I mean, key players have been injured, like Zaha's a great player, injured. Loftus-Cheek we got from Chelsea, injured. Our best player last season after 8 games was Sacco. He's injured. So he was never dealt with a full deck. I think Hodgson will come in and do a job. We've got a lot of good players there. We've got a good playing style. We play attacking football, and we've got to play the likes of Southampton, Bournemouth, Everton. I mean, we've got a tremendous record over Everton since we've been back in the Premiership. We've got to play those teams yet. So, give us a chance. I mean,
but Parky, listen. Let me ask you a question, Parky. I'm going to get to Croydon in a minute because I want your view of Croydon's skyline as to whether or not it reminds you of the East River. But the bottom line is, right, every team has injuries. Every team has setbacks. That is not an excuse. Hang on, that's not an excuse.
No, but it's not an excuse, but it's a fact that, if you've got a team, we're not Man United or Liverpool that have got 2 teams. We're a team that on our day can beat anyone, as we proved last year when we beat Chelsea, Liverpool and Arsenal in consecutive weeks. And if you can beat those 3 teams, you can beat anybody. And
but can the current squad? Can the current squad now?
Players like Lee, who played on the left side and gave away the goal we got beat at Burnley last week, he shouldn't be in the side, and he wouldn't be in the side because Townsend normally plays there, Zaha on the outside, Benteke in the middle. So we're playing a substandard team, and we've got beat, and we're in trouble. But I think Roy Hodgson will get us out of it. He's got.
Why do you think that? Why do you have so much?
The reason I had that, because he's got a tremendous experience. He's been an international manager. He's managed abroad in Italy.
Yeah, but he was rubbish at it, though.
No, he wasn't. His career. His career.
Oh, come on. Hang on, Parky.
He's not good in crisis.
He got England. Hang on, Parky. Hang on. Let me just refresh your memory, right? He got us to the World Cup in Brazil, right?
That's
However,
correct. Yeah,
everybody knows. Hang on,
well.
hang on, Parky. Everybody knows that the qualification process for the World Cup and the Euros is pointless, okay? Look at the process we're going through at the moment.
That's right, yeah.
It's too easy, right? He did not win a game. He did not win a game in Brazil.
We were out before the Germans played their second game.
Yeah.
I think what's overlooked as well, like the Euros are a good example, because the 4 teams that are in the semi-finals in the Euros, we've beaten all of them in the previous season under Roy Hodgson. We've beaten Portugal. We've beaten Germany. We've beaten Wales. I can't remember the other teams. But we've beaten all in the run-up to the... We're just not good at tournament football. It's not Roy Hodgson's fault, but we're not experienced.
Well, whose fault is it?
Well, what do you mean it's not his fault? He's a manager.
I don't think you're going to have a successful Premiership and a successful national side because one detracts from the other. You've got like 60% of the Premiership is foreign players, so you've got a smaller pool to pick from. So you're never going to have. They've got the best league in the world. We have to accept that's what we've got and enjoy that. But we have to accept also that we're never going to be the best team in the world. When we were the best team in the world, there were only 16 teams in the World Cup. Now there are 32. Very soon there'll be 48. So we're never going to win it again. So, it's...
You're right. You're right, Parky. But the point is, it's the manner of, performance. And also, don't you think that Mr. Hodgson revealed an awful lot about himself in the aftermath of very poor performance in the Euros? Important. The aftermath being that he didn't feel he had a responsibility to turn up and tell the British public why he'd failed so badly. And when he was put on the spot and dragged almost screaming into that press conference by the media operators at the FA who did exactly what they should have done, he then said, I don't know what I'm doing here.
I think there's a couple of things people are forgetting. The BBC did a profile of Iceland a year before the Euros, because they were improving and getting really good results. They're a really good team. They're physically very strong. The England team didn't have a plan B. That was where we went wrong. But I think the players have got to take...
We should have had a plan B.
Well, we should have done.
And a plan C, if that didn't work, and a plan D.
But when we had players like Owen and Heskey and Beckham and...
Well, we haven't got them anymore.
Well, hang on, Parky. Parky, would you not accept, Parky, that you've been slightly, shall we say, economical with the truth when you said that he's been a great international manager? He hasn't been. Just admit that he was rubbish.
Well, he won 56 games and he lost 7, so that's not bad.
Oh, yeah, but the 7 he lost, we all know, were crucial games.
PR department.
I think the rarefied air I think the rarefied air in the Manhattan of suburban London is getting to you.
Now tell us, Parky, when you stare out, Parky, hang on, when you stare out at the vista that you see from Croydon, you know, what is the building for you that represents the Empire State Building? What is it?
Well, I don't know. The Nissos building's good, but also we've got the NLA Tower. That's which is the Threepenny Bit building.
What tower?
The NLA Tower. It's
MLA.
It's a Threepenny Bit building because it's like hexagon, and it's by East Croydon Station, and that's like synonymous with Croydon. But what I was saying was the players have to accept a lot of responsibility for the way we played against Iceland. I mean, they're international players, and they're all Premiership players, and they just didn't perform on the day. And that can happen. I mean, stage fright is a terrible thing, but it does happen. But overall, Hodgson did well because he made us hard to beat. We were much more organised.
Well, we weren't hard to beat.
No,
everybody beat us.
Parky, you've gone mad, mate.
Well,
you know, the old hexagon tower. The hexagon tower has poisoned your mind.
Wales didn't beat us. We beat them, and they got to semi-finals. So, you know... Yeah. We didn't do
quite remarkable performance, that actually. Remarkably lucky for England to get that.
We've got to leave it there, Parky. Listen, thank you very much indeed. Please go for a long walk around the tram stop at East Croydon Station and see whether or not you might be being slightly more optimistic than Roy Hodgson's appointment would suggest. How about this from Nuri, who says, I'm not a Palace fan, but Hodgson should never have been employed again after the England debacle.
That's right.
I despise him as a manager. And then he says, enjoy New York City, lads. I think it's fair to say we will enjoy New York City.
Yeah, we will definitely enjoy New York City. There's no doubt about that. I mean, again, the thing that we haven't touched on, because we might be accused of being ageist, is that at 70 years of age, you do not have the energy you had when, for instance, he took Fulham to the Europa League final. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He doesn't have the energy he had when he was the national manager of Switzerland. He is now brought into a crisis situation which required the energy, the tenacity, and the sort of determination and willpower of somebody like Chris Coleman.
Yeah.
Because I could see Chris Coleman doing a fantastic job at Crystal Palace. You see what I mean?
Yes.
You know, if he's going to come back into club management, and obviously he can't now because he's in mid qualifying competition.
But if he came back into
management, doing a brilliant recovery job.
But if he came back into management, Chris Coleman would be coming back as a conquering hero.
Of course he would,
because he's taken Wales to places they never dreamed of going.
Yeah.
Roy Hodgson is like a guy that you pick up in the car boot sale where you go, he used to be really good.
Yeah.
He used to take people like Fulham to the final of the Europa League.
Yes.
He used to be an international manager, but actually now he's a busted flush.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And another thing as well about the temperament and the personality of Mr. Hodgson is that actually a lot of people who'd gone through what he'd gone through and suffered the national humiliation he heaped upon this country would actually have sloped off into the shadows and stayed there.
Absolutely.
Because they would have said to themselves, I didn't do a very good job there.
No.
And I don't think I should put my head above the parapet again because people will shoot at me because I failed.
Exactly. But unfortunately, and this is where his bit about being conceited comes in.
I think it is.
He thinks
I think it is
that he can prove something.
Yeah.
He thinks that he's brilliant. He thinks that it's not his fault. As you said, this is a guy who turned up in a place after having taken what? How many millions did he take out of the FA?
About 14.
14 million. And he didn't know why he had to answer for what had happened in the Euros when a team like England got knocked out by a team like Iceland.
That's right.
I think he's a dreadful manager, and I think he'll bring Crystal Palace nothing but misery and relegation.
Yeah.
This is Talk Sport.
We'll have Manhattan, the Bronx and Staten Island too. It's lovely going through the zoo. It's very fancy on old Delancey Street, you know. The subway charms us so when balmy breezes blow to and fro. And tell me what street
Delancey Street down in the village, Soho Way. That's not far from the City Winery where we're going to go tomorrow.
Exactly.
Lunchtime.
Yes.
Be there or be square.
Or
Or
be
watch
unaware.
it. Or watch it if you like on a live stream.
That's right.
Check out the 2mics.co.uk and you can see it there.
That's where all the
That's
info
where you
is.
do everything you need, right?
Absolutely.
How about this from John? He says, enough about useless Hodgson. What about Koeman, Porky? Great to hear you boys from New York City.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. And Koeman is a very big worry.
He is.
Because, yes, Palace have got off to a dreadful start, but Everton are the expectation factor weighs heavily against Everton at the start of this season in a way it didn't against Crystal Palace.
Yes.
Okay, Crystal Palace had a new manager, a new Dutch manager. Okay, Everton have got a manager starting his second season with a great buying spree during the summer. So both fans were optimistic, but the expectations at Everton were huge this season.
Oh, absolutely.
And they've been dissipated in a very cruel way.
And we're going to get into that in the next hour, okay? Yeah. So we want Everton fans to call us as well, because, of course, Porky is heartbroken by what's been going on. We were here last night, and, of course, the Europa League was on, and we were on our way into Manhattan in a very, very beautiful, big, black Cadillac Escalade.
Yes.
When we heard the news that not only were Everton losing 1-0...
It was 1-2-3.
Suddenly it was 2-0, and suddenly it was 3-0. Before we got to the Midtown Tunnel, it was 3-0. Shocking state of affairs. Here's one from Peter, who says that Parky guy should be a press secretary in North Korea. Yasmin says, great to hear you both from wonderful New York. Brilliant show so far. I totally agree about Roy Hodgson. He's a disaster. Yeah. And Nick says, Parky the Palace fan is talking more tosh than Mike Parry will ever do. In fact, he's making Porky sound educated.
Yeah, well, Jane says that bloke Parky was a plank. Yeah. Okay, so I think that was because he sort of kept talking with his view and wouldn't accept anything we said to him.
And also, he thinks the hexagonal building in Croydon, which I've forgotten the name of, is actually better
right. The
than
Threepenny
Empire State.
Bit.
The Threepenny Bit. Shocking state of affairs.
Was it the LMA?
LMA, yes.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Is that the League Managers Association
building?
No,
it's not.
No?
It's
leaving... It's not a London Metal Exchange.
No,
it's
I don't know what it is.
Let's talk to Pav, who's a man of the world. He's also a Man United fan. He thinks Roy Hodgson is a disaster. Pav, a very good evening to you.
Good evening, gent. Sad that I'm not with you there, but oh well.
I'm sorry you're not here, Pav. We haven't seen you for ages.
We haven't. We haven't met you. Don't worry, we'll rectify it.
I was going to say, I don't think I've ever seen you actually, Pav.
Yeah,
but,
Pav used to come to in the old days when we used to do shows. We used to do shows, Pav, at a very, very splendid place called the Head and Chickens.
Oh yes, of course.
On Highbury Corner.
Of course.
Pav came to a couple of those shows.
Pav, it was great to see you.
And we're now doing New York City, Pav. I can't believe you're not here.
Oh, sorry, mate. It's family issues, but next time, don't worry, it's in hand.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm just glad you guys are on air because, do you know what? All week, through a variety of mediums, I've just heard the same nonsense that, unfortunately, Roy Hodgson's progeny Parky there was espousing to you guys. And that's just been this nonsense of he's a safe pair of hands, this. And then, do you know what capped it all off was when Hodgson came on the TV and they caught an interview with him and he said, I only lost 7 out of 56 games, but the green shoots of recovery, this young England team I put together. Well, what a revisionist rigmarole that is. I mean, let's be honest here.
Rubbish.
This guy failed at Liverpool, failed at Blackburn. He did well at two clubs, respectively, Fulham and West Brom, who, let's be honest, in those respective seasons weren't in any danger of going anywhere in terms of relegation. And, you talked about delusion, something which people have missed. This is a guy, guys, that in 1997-98, when he was managing Blackburn, he actually said with a straight face, and I'm not sure if he was on anything, but clearly he must have been, that he should be up there with Alex Ferguson. This Alex Ferguson at the time had won a double with Man United, won back-to-back Premier League titles, and obviously he hadn't won everything else yet, but still, he actually said that with a straight face, that he felt that his credentials were on par with him. This is how deluded this guy is. What has he achieved?
Well, you see, this is about the ego, Pav. This is about the ego that we've been talking about. He thinks he brings something special to a club because he reads books by German philosophers.
Does he?
And he does, and all that kind of stuff. No, who's the other guy?
Nietzsche?
Nietzsche and Jürgen or something.
Jürgen,
yeah.
That's Jürgen Klopp.
No, there's a guy called Jürgen or somebody.
Jürgen?
Yeah, something like that.
Sure?
Anyway, the point is he does read philosophers' books and believes himself to be a philosopher in many ways on football matters.
Yes.
And as you quite rightly say, to introduce rubbish like, I sowed the green shoots of recovery in the England team, we don't even know if England recovered yet until we get to a tournament.
Well, this is the thing. And do you know what makes it even worse is that, you're absolutely right. This haughty, arrogant nature he seems to have. I mean, you're spot on. The FA should have got rid of him back when he failed at the World Cup. And this is the problem. People are going, and I've had chats with MG when he used to do the show before, but you returned, Mike, as well. The problem is we keep going back in this country to these failed English managers. You had the likes before, I'm not going to name names, but the same one, hoping they might just keep doing something new. Was it Einstein that said something along the lines, if you keep doing the same thing and expect different results, you're insane? Well, I think that applies, unfortunately, to some of our clubs because they haven't learned the lesson. And with regard to your philosophy stuff, spot on. You have to have facts, Mike. And this guy's got nothing. There's no substance there. There's absolutely nothing. It's astonishing.
I'll tell you what, Pav, we visited Liverpool to see an Everton-Liverpool game when he was manager at Liverpool, and we spoke to one of the Liverpool squad that day after the game, who said that Roy Hodgson had been left behind in what's needed in modern football to stimulate a squad in the way that Premier League football now has to be played.
Did he not describe how on day one, and much was made of this when he went to Palace this week for his first day of training, and day one when he turned up at Liverpool, apparently, much to the chagrin and horror of the Liverpool players,
he had a load of
cones under his arm. And he put the cones out and had them all running around the cones. And they're all going, hang on a second, it's all about diet, it's all about sort of, energy levels, it's all about getting the absolute most out of the brain of a footballer, it's about science, it's not about running around cones.
Maybe he wanted to make them all new age traffic wardens. Who knows?
Well, no, he didn't. But I mean, many people think he's been left behind in the football world, and you can see that he could have been left behind because of
I wish he had been left behind.
Well, some Palace
Let's ask Pav about the most important question of the day.
Yes.
Because although I know, Pav, you haven't got the bad taste of living in Croydon, can you please tell us, is there anything about Croydon that reminds you anything at all about Manhattan?
I've got to, even I, as an ex-barrister, would struggle to defend that case. I've got to.
Well, Croydon's ahead of Manhattan in transport.
Excuse me, what do you mean ex-barrister? You've been struck off?
No, absolutely not. I've just started doing other things and just basically minimised it. I can still practice, but it's just not enough money in it, to be honest.
Okay.
We'll
all right. Well,
you're the only person who's ever said there's not enough money in being a barrister.
No, exactly.
You're having a laugh, Fred.
You must have been a bum barrister, Pav, I'm afraid. But anyway, look, we've got to move on, Pav.
Yeah,
Thank you very much indeed.
We've got Fred, the Crystal Palace fan, who wants to have a word. Fred, a very good evening to you.
Hi, how's it going, guys? Great show.
Yeah, it's going very well, thank you.
Very well indeed. Are you calling us from Croydon, the Manhattan of the South?
That's right, yeah. There's only what I want to say about Roy Hodgson.
Go on.
He scored so many goals. Oh, God.
Hey, he's what?
I don't think Fred's feeling terribly
well.
No,
I don't think you are, Fred. Yeah. I should go and try and...
He didn't sound like a Crystal Palace fan.
No, he
didn't
honest, actually, no. And,
he sounded like somebody from the northeast of England.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Did he not?
Yeah. I was going to say that you could say that Croydon is ahead of Manhattan in one particular aspect, and that's
in time it's ahead.
No, they're
5 hours ahead.
No, their transport policy. They've got trams in
trams
Croydon.
Trams are not the answer.
No, trams can be the answer. Trams in a rapid transport network.
Are you saying you want trams in London?
Well, I'm not saying that I want trams in London or anywhere else, but I'm saying that they have got trams in Croydon. They work very effectively. We went up to...
Yeah, but that's because nobody goes there.
No, you don't understand. Croydon is a thriving metropolis, you know.
No, it's
not. It is.
It's not a thriving
metropolis. I know that, you have this snooty idea that the only part of London worth living is Hampstead.
That's not true.
But Croydon is, Croydon's not a bad place. Croydon gets bad press.
Right, there are two things you've now said about Croydon, and I'm going to have to draw a line under Croydon. You've said, one, it reminds you of Manhattan, and two, that it's a thriving metropolis.
It is.
Both statements are totally and utterly incorrect.
If you shoot down into Stockbroker Belt, Surrey, on a train, and you look to your left, you see towers.
Yes.
And the first thing it always reminds you is, that looks a little bit like a mini Manhattan, and it's Croydon.
Mini Manhattan?
Yeah.
I mean, are you sure?
Yeah.
Would you like me to get you something to drink in the meantime when we have a little break for the news?
No.
Like some kind of recovery juice?
No, don't
because you've clearly started to go mad.
I haven't.
This is TalkSport. We are the Two Mics. We'll take more of your calls, of course, coming up in the next hour. 08717 22 3344. We'll also talk about Everton, and we will have some Porky Vision for you as well.
Indeed. Has been cleaned beyond recognition since I last saw it about 10 years ago. I mean, one of the reasons why the death of Lennon was so shocking and so poignant was that the Dakota building looked like a sort of castle in Romania. It looked like
it's quite
Dracula's
gothic,
castle.
isn't it? Yeah.
Very gothic and very, it's got pointed steeples on the roof and all that kind of stuff. And it was soot black because it hadn't been cleaned for nearly a century. Right. I remember somebody telling me that.
Right.
It's got 2 feet of sand between each floor of the building. It's a magnificent building, and Lennon's apartment's at the back. And to walk over the pavement where John Lennon breathed his last breath after being mercilessly cut down, with 5 bullets in his back from a coward who shot him because he wanted to beat John Lennon himself, is terribly emotional. You go across the road.
I must admit, even though I'm nowhere near as big of a Beatles fan as you are,
sure.
Obviously I thought John Lennon was an amazing man.
Yes.
I was similarly chilled in a way, because as much as when I lived in New York, I drove past the place many times.
That's right.
He was killed a long time before I moved there, and I never actually had walked past the building and thought about that situation.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you stand there and you see, what you remember from the press photographs of the time.
That's right.
Of the opening, the entrance, the kind of just the sort of the memory of the whole thing is quite upsetting. Really.
Absolutely. And if only his car had driven in, because those 2 big gates open and vehicles can go in. If only his car had driven him into the courtyard in the middle, because his apartment entrance is on the far side, he'd still be with us today. It's terrible. Then we go across the road, okay?
Yeah.
Then we go across Central Park West.
Central Park West, yes.
And we go into the park itself, into Central Park.
Yeah.
Huge park, by the way, one of the biggest.
Beautiful park as well.
One of the biggest sort of city parks in the world. And then we're at Strawberry Fields.
Yeah.
Now, you could explain why you felt disappointed by the actual mosaic,
Yes.
Strawberry Fields.
Well, it wasn't just the mosaic, it was just the fact that, and I suppose maybe I'm being a little bit more critical than I should be,
Yeah.
but basically it's a pretty iconic spot. I think it was Yoko Ono that decided that there should be a place for John Lennon's memory.
She
And
did.
The thing that I found, there were two things that I found slightly disturbing. One, it was full of coach parties of tourists. Now, you can't stop people coming and looking at stuff.
Yeah.
But, it's not Trafalgar Square. It's not Times Square.
Well, it was
it's
even...
it's supposed to be a place of, a place of contemplation, shall we say.
Well, that position was even more disappointing from the fact that there were signs on the entrance to Strawberry Fields which said this is a place of peace, of contentment, of quietness, all the sort of things that John Lennon and Yoko Ono promulgated during their union together, their lifetime, and therefore it should have been a place of reverence.
Yes.
So we get in there, and not only do we find sort of 35 Japanese tourists all standing on the mosaic.
No, it wasn't the fact that they were Japanese, it was the fact that they were just busloads of tourists.
Well,
some of them were from Japan, some of them were from other parts of America.
I agree, but what I'm saying, people come from that far away from Japan to see it, and then they're walking over the mosaic itself. There was one girl there who was posing in sort of all sorts of strange poses, like ballet poses.
She was trying to do like sort of a yoga position, wasn't she?
She was, that sort of thing, and having
unsuccessfully, rather.
But the most disappointing thing about it, and I think John Lennon would have found this very funny, was some toothless old guy sitting on a bench nearby with a battered guitar and his guitar case open, i.e., I'm busking, so give me a few dollars, singing, and he started strumming his guitar, and you and I stopped to listen to which John Lennon record he's going to play, and he started singing "Here Comes the Sun," which was written and sung by George Harrison
on Abbey Road.
So, and probably one of his most distinguished records. So we started thinking that's a bit odd. Well, perhaps he's just doing that as a tribute to John Lennon. The next song he broke into was a very poor version of "Let It Be."
It was.
Let It Be, in fact, was written by Paul McCartney in the dying embers of the days
by
of
the
the
way,
Beatles.
is playing a show here this weekend at Madison Square Garden.
Let me tell you. Well, the story about that is, because I just came down past the garden.
Oh, did you? Okay.
On the way here.
Right.
And there's huge signs all over the place. Paul McCartney's obviously heard we're here.
Yes.
Because guess why?
Why?
He's playing tonight, the 15th,
Yes.
okay? And he is playing Sunday, the 17th.
Oh, right.
But he is not playing on Saturday, the 16th.
Oh, right. Do you think maybe he's going to pop by the City Winery?
Well, he might be popping by the City Winery.
Ask for a freebie.
But I don't think he likes the competition.
Oh, right.
Fact is that the two mics are at the City Winery on the 16th, and Paul McCartney decided to take a night's break.
To be fair, it's a slightly smaller venue than the Madison Square Garden
It's
venue.
slightly smaller than Madison Square Garden. But just getting to the end of the Strawberry Fields one, Let It Be, which our toothless strumming guitarist then broke into.
Right. And also a bit unseemly that you're trying to make money, because one of the things I said to you as we left was that the reason I didn't like the mosaic that much was it seemed very unimaginative.
It was
and it said imagine in the middle, but it's just black and white.
Yeah, well...
There were no colours.
She was an artist, and she designed it, and Yoko Ono still is an artist, and that was her. But the point is, Let It Be was written by Paul McCartney as a plea to John Lennon with the words, if you listen to the words of Let It Be, can we let it be, and can we just get on with life as the Beatles? Because, that's us. And, of course, that plea was never... accepted by John Lennon. Had already decided he was going to leave it. It was too late, and it was all over. So,
although as we walked further away from the scene,
yes,
which took us a little while because it's quite a big area, we did hear him breaking into the dulcet tones of Imagine.
Yes, we did. Yeah, but
he was also killing that song.
He was killing it stone dead. He must do that 6 times a week. And Central Park, by the way, is so big. I never realised how huge it is.
Yes.
I mean, if we'd wanted to walk up right to the top of it, it would have taken us half an hour at least. 3/4 an hour. But we then walk the other way, and we're walking down towards the Essex House on Central Park South.
That's right.
And the magnificent view of Central Park South with the Essex House in letters right above the Essex House Hotel itself. And, of course, we wandered onto the field, which was where, in the last scene of Wall Street, Michael Douglas, in a rainstorm, confronted Charlie Sheen and said, "Why did you do it, kid?"
Yeah.
And, of course,
and then
Charlie
he punched
Sheen...
him, didn't he?
Yeah, but Charlie Sheen was wired up because Charlie Sheen had turned Queen's Evidence as it would be called in our country.
Yes.
I don't know what it's called here, but he'd started working with the cops.
I think he's gone over to the other side.
He'd gone over to the other side.
State's evidence, I think they call it.
State's evidence, that's right. And that nailed Michael Douglas, and that was fantastic to see that backdrop to one of the most iconic films of the 80s, really, when you and I lived and worked here.
Absolutely right. Now, a couple more tweets have come in on the subject of Mr. Hodgson. Andy says this, a bit harsh on Mr. Hodgson, drinking men still sing his name, ... in Reykjavik.
I should think they do, yeah.
Here's one that says...
Oh, let's raise a glass of Roy Hodgson.
Oh, that's the Dutch you're thinking of there.
No, I'm thinking of the Icelandic. No, the Icelandic would be, yes, we raise a glass to Roy Hodgson, yeah.
That still sounds Dutch.
Well,
James says
Sigurdsson, who plays for Everton, Icelandic, speaks like an Englishman, so I can't really do Icelandic.
No, indeed. Well, you used to go to Iceland quite a lot.
I did,
be able to do it.
I did.
James says, I never thought I'd hear somebody compare Manhattan to Croydon. Has he now officially gone mad?
No,
I'd love a shout-out, please, from Mr. Parry, says James.
Yeah, James? James, thank you very much indeed for your contribution to the show.
Now,
all contributions welcome.
Now, we are going to be talking about Everton coming up a little bit later on and taking more of your calls as well. Adam says, Porky, forget about Rooney's marriage problems. Everton's downturn started when Barkley did a U-turn on his Chelsea move. I mean, I don't know what's happened to Ross Barkley. Did he play the other night against the man from Atalanta?
I do not know. Do you know why? Because once I heard the score, I haven't even read a match report. Seriously.
You're actually hiding away from it now.
I am. I couldn't bring myself to.
I mean, Manchester United coming up at the weekend.
I know.
It's not going to be good, is
I'm
it?
sorry, but I fear the worst. Even though I'm putting on a brave front and saying Everton can revive themselves. I mean, you take these games two ways. You either say it's another nail in the coffin of a very depressing start to the season, or you say pull yourselves together and get at them, and see if we can do something about it. And if Ronald Koeman is the manager we think he is, then I believe he's capable of doing that.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
Now, I've got a lovely tweet here from Naomi in Minnesota, which is actually her birthday today, but she didn't tell me that. I've just found out because, on Twitter, when it's your birthday, you get a lot of balloons going up and down. Now, Naomi in Sarasota, you might remember, is the lovely lady who sent us those beautiful Mont Blanc pens.
I know,
but
fabulous.
the last conversation we had with her was because she was from Sarasota in Florida.
Yes.
She's hoping to come to the show tomorrow in Manhattan.
Yes.
But she didn't know when she went back to Sarasota, which she'd evacuated from, whether she would have a house.
That's right.
So, Naomi, if you're on Twitter, I'm only assuming and hoping that you managed to get back to Sarasota.
And your house
is still standing, and you are coming to the City Winery tomorrow. So please let us know if you possibly could.
Please
tweet us at the two mics.
Yeah,
we've got loads more coming up. This is TalkSport.
East side, west side, all around the town. The tots sang Ring a Rosie. London Bridge is falling down. Boys and girls together, me and Mamie O'Rourke, trip the light fantastic on the sidewalks of New York.
Singing about New York City, you call it drivel. You're in Manhattan. Have a bit of respect for some of its icons, please.
Well, Nat King Cole's not sort of on my sort of musical radar.
Really? Well, what would you rather have?
Well,
have you got any nominations for New York songs?
Well, I mean, I suppose, I could say, well, John Lennon wrote a song in which, he wrote it about New York, didn't he? Nobody told me there were days like these.
Well, where's New York in the title?
It's not in the title, but it is in the lyrics in which they say UFOs over New York, and isn't it a surprise?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe we can get our very fine people in London to play that song, if
Absolutely.
That's what you so wish. However, right now, we have something of a much more important nature to discuss. And it is, of course, the state of Everton Football Club.
Yes.
Because Everton Football Club were supposedly the ones who were ahead of the game. They were the team that were doing all the right things in the transfer window, buying players when nobody else was doing it, setting themselves up for a great new spine of a team. And unfortunately, even you, Porky, would have to admit that so far the season has been a big disappointment.
A very big disappointment.
Massive disappointment. Now, we're going to talk to Harding Royster, who's a member of the NYC Evertonians.
Indeed.
He's an Everton fan, lives right here in Midtown Manhattan. And let's find out from him how disappointed he is. Harding, a very good evening to you.
Good evening. How are you guys?
Yeah,
very well indeed. Well, say very well, Harding. I'm one of yours. I'm one of you. I'm an Evertonian, born and bred and brought up 3-generation family. And I can't quite understand why it's gone so wrong. Have you got any ideas?
It's absolutely baffling because when you consider this felt like a transfer window where Everton finally kind of got their way. I think you listen to a lot of older Evertonians, and it was unlike anything they'd ever experienced. We got all the players, but as the transfer window kept on, I do think a lot of us had some sagging or nagging doubts of, well, where's the rest of it? And when the season started, we knew the fixtures were going to be tough. We didn't fill the biggest hole we needed to fill, after the Spurs game, I think we were like, well, let's see how it happens in Europa, and now we know what happened there.
Yeah, I know, you're absolutely right. Do you know what, at one point, Harding, I read all the speculation that was going on, and Troy Deeney was on Everton's radar. Now, he couldn't replace Lukaku in terms of success or number of goals, but at least, Harding, we'd have had that big man target up front, which Mr. Koeman spent the summer looking for.
Yeah, and I think that, we're not the only club that had their sights set on the perfect player. You look at Van Dijk at Liverpool, and it's sort of this weird thing of, well, if we don't get the perfect player, we're not going to do anything else. And sometimes you just have to take what's there. And I think when it comes to strikers, I think we should have just not been so – I don't know exactly what happened, but I think we should have had at least 3 other options because Lukaku scored a lot of goals and we've done nothing to try and fix that.
Yeah. The other thing for me, Harding, as well, is that Ronald Koeman comes across as a very serious manager. He paints himself as a kind of a great tactician, a disciplinarian. I mean, 2 things have gone wrong for him, it seems to me. He's brought Wayne Rooney back. Now, whether that was down to him or down to people above him, we don't know.
No, it's down to him.
But basically, Rooney has let him down. He's let the club down. We know all about that. We're not going to get into the details of it, but there's a court case coming up shortly. They didn't respond to Lukaku leaving to go to Manchester United. And I think there's going to be a period, if it doesn't change, Harding, where people are going to say, well, is Ronald Koeman actually as great as he says he is?
Yeah, I think that, it's nice to hear him be a little bit more honest than, the last guy after a defeat, but he was very, very vocal about supporting Wayne Rooney's move to Everton, very vocal, and he was very, very big about it. And I think a lot of us were a little more ambivalent. We knew that there was still something there, but we never looked at Wayne Rooney probably as the main target. And it sort of feels like it's also confusing because then when you go and get a player like Sigurdsson and play him out on the wing, it's worrisome because I think he understands that things are wrong and that things need to change. I don't know if he knows how to fix it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you see, the thing is, Harden, I think we bought too many midfield players and as you've already pointed out, didn't concentrate on plugging that gap, that huge gap that opened up when Lukaku went. Now, it's all very well having players like, Gylfi Sigurdsson and buying Klaassen, the Dutch player, but actually they've all performed pathetically in the last 2 games, 2 heavy defeats, Atalanta 3-0 and Spurs 3-0. And so, clearly, Mr. Koeman's plan, as it was, is either short of its vital component, which is a big striker up front, or his plan is rubbish. I mean, I'm not sure which one of the 2 it is.
When you watch the game, I was watching the game yesterday. And
right, I didn't see it. We were flying yesterday.
Well, you're lucky.
Right.
It's when you look at the game, it's very hard to understand what the plan is. Sometimes when the team's playing badly, you can tell, like, okay, it's because this player is just having a bad game or just tactically everything is wrong. It's hard to understand what the plan is right now, and it's hard to understand what he's trying to do with such a stacked midfield to the point where I even think defensively we're not even set up correctly, and everything hinges so much on this midfield, and it's a midfield with players out of position that I think it just throws everything off balance, and no one knows what's going on. I mean, after I think it was the second goal, the players just look confused.
Yeah. And I mean,
at
one point,
thing,
as we were driving into Manhattan yesterday, right, in that very nice Cadillac Escalade, I have to say to you that Porky admitted, he said, well, what exactly is Ronald Koeman keeping the players away from Atalanta for so they can get slaughtered at Manchester United? Yeah. Because Wayne Rooney's going to return to Old Trafford and presumably to, I don't know what kind of reception, but nobody in their right mind is going to think that United will not get 3 points out of that, surely.
Well, I hope very much.
Be shellacking, yeah.
Well,
shellacking is a great word.
See, thing is, Harding, I could accuse you of, losing the faith and, expressing disloyalty and all that. But I'm closer to agreeing with you than berating you because,
which is in a way the most shocking thing. Yeah. I've never seen you, Mike, and I've known you many years. Yeah. I've never seen you so resigned to Everton just being disappointing.
Yeah, they are very disappointing. I mean, the thing is, Harding, that I'm not sure how with the current squad we get out of this, because if we haven't got anybody scoring goals, and our goal-scoring record, can you believe it, Harding, is entirely now based on Wayne Rooney's 2 Premier League goals, which is 100% of the goals we've scored in the Premier League. I don't know how we're going to get out of it. We've got... go on.
No, I just feel like usually when you can tell when a team's starting to bottom out, and I think you usually have a good feeling of like, all right, we're on the wobble, we're bottoming out. It's hard to know. It's hard to see where the bounce back is going to come from. Obviously, we're hoping the easier fixtures to come, but if you can't score goals, you're not going to win games.
No, that's absolutely right. And we've got young Dominic Calvin-Lewin, and he's a great player, but he's a young lad, and needs the support. And the other thing about Mr. Koeman is that he came in as a great manager. We're paying him £5 million a year, I believe, which is a tremendous amount of money in England for a coach. Believe me, Harding. You're talking here about $6 million or even $7 million a year. And the point is that he was only able to exercise all that money in the transfer market in the summer because of the brilliance of the chairman, Mr. Bill Kenwright, who bought Lukaku for £28 million off Chelsea, and everybody said, well, you've wasted a lot of money there on a man who's not proven himself, and sold him for 75. So he made £50 million, thank you, down to Mr. Kenwright, who then hands it to, the man who's said to be the great aspiring up-and-coming manager in the Premier League, who appears to have wasted it. So this is, I don't see any light at the end of this tunnel. That's the problem.
Yeah, and the thing about Koeman is it's not like his record is spotless. He did some great things at Southampton, but stuff at Valencia is a little worrisome. And I think sometimes when you played back in the day and were a superstar, I think it's much easier to convince yourself that even when things are going wrong, you've got the right plan. And I think he seems, I think he's more honest than someone like Martinez.
Yes, he is.
But I think he's also just as stubborn, and he seems very much into playing quote unquote his guys. And sometimes you just have to be objective and say, my guys aren't doing that well. I've got to change something up.
Yeah, he had that with Stecklenburg, didn't he? The goalkeeper last season. Very average goalkeeper, but because he was Dutch, he sort of, he got the vote.
How about this, guys? Jonah has tweeted us at the 2 mics. He says, Koeman's biggest mistake was letting Gareth Barry go. 600th Premiership start tomorrow. # top player. Gareth Barry was a good player, wasn't he?
I do not necessarily disagree with that. Yeah, he was a very stable player, very, very good influence on the team. Well, anyway, listen, Harding, we've got to keep the faith, mate, because we have got some very good players. It's just a question of put them in the right sort of combination to get them to play. Let's hope we works it out before Christmas.
Let's hope so. Harding, thank you very much indeed. We've got much, much more to do coming up. Dave has tweeted us. He says this, in New York City for Partners 40th, about to go for a meal at Daniel. I'm not sure if that's a restaurant, I presume it is. Listening whilst getting ready, can you wish Kelly a happy birthday?
And how old is Kelly?
Kelly Callan, it's her 40th birthday.
Her 40th birthday. Yes. Kelly, have a very happy 40th birthday. I've got a wish here as well. It comes from Edward.
Yes.
He's a Hammers fan. He says, I hope you enjoy New York, gents. Please wish Billy Walsh a happy 7th birthday for tomorrow, Saturday the 16th. Well, that's the day we're doing our live show, Billy. So I hope you have a great birthday, my son, at 7 years of age. Got your whole life in front of you, and I hope you have a really smashing day.
Indeed.
And as you're a West Ham fan, you're not enjoying the best of times at the moment, but it has turned the corner.
But at least they've won a game, so things are looking up. This is TalkSport. We are the 2 mics. Loads more coming up. We'll be back.
I don't drink coffee, I take tea, my dear. I like my toast on one side. You can hear it in my accent when I talk. I'm an Englishman in New York.
It's a great song, isn't it? Sting. Yeah, absolutely. Right, now then, listen up. You're listening to the 2 mics, of course. And let me tell you this, TalkSport has joined forces with the Sun Dream Team, powered by Homebase, to bring you expert tips for the UK's biggest fantasy football game.
Indeed. Listen to the Weekend Sports Breakfast with Georgie Bingham and Tony Cascarino from 7 tomorrow morning for in-depth Dream Team analysis and to find out which players might be the bargain buys. It's all thanks to Homebase.
That's right. Now visit in-store or online for low prices on big tool brands. The AEG 18-volt 2-piece combi kit is £158. The AEG 18-volt SDS rotary hammer drill is just £169.99. And the AEG 18-volt combi hammer drill kit, just £104.99p.
Blimey. Release your inner gaffer and select your squad now at dreamteamfc.com. It's free to enter and you could win a share of the massive £750,000 prize pot. Sign up to the Homebase League for a chance to win Premier League tickets every month.
Englishman in New York.
I always imagine walking down, I don't know, Avenue of the Americas, walking up Fifth Avenue.
Yes.
Walking across 49th Street.
Yes.
How about that cab driver we had last night, by the way, who decided, bizarrely, that even though we were on 49th Street, in order to get to 46th Street, he was going to go down to 39th then cut across and then come back up. Unbelievable. I mean, I can understand taxi drivers struggling to find their way around London.
Yes.
But to be in a position to not understand that 49 and 46 is basically 3 streets away and just go across is a nightmare.
We got in at 49th. We said we wanted to go to 46, albeit a few blocks across, and all of a sudden we're on 39th.
Yeah.
And we're also driving
through the MetLife building.
Driving through what used to be the Pan Am building,
exactly right.
you know, which is that funny little bridge that goes over 42nd Street and all that. The other thing, by the way, is that, the bikes have arrived in New York as they have in London. Been here for years. It's just that I haven't been here for years to see
to be honest, I've only noticed them, say, in the last year and a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, we got out of a cab this morning going up to Central Park. Yeah. And this guy was screaming at me, get out of the goddamn way! And I looked round, and this guy was hurtling towards me on a bicycle because they haven't separated the road from the bike lane. The bike lane is between the pavements and where the cars are driving.
And also where the cars are parked in some cases.
Cars are parked in some cases. Yeah. And did you know, by the way, and I think it's a terrible statistic, I think I read before we came away, there were 11 deaths in Britain last year on what's called door openings. These are people who open doors and don't look. Well, I was guilty of that this morning, but I did say to my driver, because remember they drive on the different side of the road to us there.
They do, yeah.
I said, am I okay to get out? Because I can't see in his wing mirror, but he can.
Yes.
He said, yeah, you're fine. But when I opened the door, this guy was hurtling down. It could have been an accident.
No, then he wasn't in a cycle lane. So, it's a massive problem in New York as much as it is in London. We'll talk about that some more. Let's go back to the phones, though. You can, of course, have your say. We are the two mics, and we are very, very willing to entertain what you have to say, as long as it's not too idiotic. 08717 22 3344.
Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Just because I don't agree with you.
See, you say that, but I would disagree with you. But let's talk to Matt, who's a Man United fan, first of all, and see what he's got to say. Matt, a very good evening to you.
How you doing?
Yeah, very well.
Very well, Matt.
Now, Matt, you understand what I say. When I mean, I'm very happy to entertain lots of different people's ideas. What I'm saying is if you're going to be an idiot like the last guy that rang up and started talking in a sort of fake Geordie accent and just shouting at us with some ludicrous nonsense, that's not the kind of people we want.
He was a fool.
We want people like Matt.
You're not a fool, Matt, so tell us, come on.
Just in, terms of you talking about Roy Hodgson, you think over the last, I'd say 20, 30 years, apart from maybe Bobby Robson, all the England managers, after they've left the England job, they've not really went on to anything to do much else better. Maybe, McLaren won a couple of league titles in Europe, but came back to England, failed. So I just don't see why Palace, when there's a lot of other good, choices for manager out there, like Jukanovic at Fulham, why they would go for someone like Hodgson.
It's a really good point you make it, Matt, because in the eyes of the national footballing public, Hodgson is not only a disgraced man, but he's a very unpopular man. So
he's quite popular in Scotland. He's for what he did with England anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. But you're quite right, because actually the premise on which an England manager was appointed always used to be, this is the pinnacle of your career.
Yes.
So, for instance, for Bobby Robson, after doing everything he did with Ipswich, he very nearly won them a league title when our colleague Alan Brazil played in that famous Ipswich team. He certainly won the FA Cup. He won the UEFA Cup, as it was in those days. Yeah. And then he moved on to England, the pinnacle of his career. So when an England manager has actually done the England job, he should then just shuffle off. Yeah. There should not be anything else around. And you're quite right, because Glenn Hoddle tried club management, it didn't work. Sven-Göran Eriksson went round the world mopping up loads of money all over the place, but it didn't really work.
He was very good in China, I'm told.
Yeah, exactly, and all that kind of stuff. And you're right, Matt, and you know what? It's a bit like sort of politicians, take Tony Blair or take President of the United States of America, Bill Clinton. They seem to then cash in on the pinnacle of their career type job and go on to make more. And it strikes me, Roy Hodgson is on that trail.
Yeah, he's just looking for another place to get in. I think he
By the way, he took enough from England, He took about 14 million
Well, it's not like
England
he needs the money, is it?
No.
I know. So he's
what do you make of? A couple of questions for you, Matt. Yeah. Obviously, one because you are from north of the border. Gordon Strachan, you happy with him? Scotland probably not going to make the World Cup, even though
they've had a fighting and battling campaign.
But they probably won't. They will be glorious failures as they always are.
Too late.
They started too late. They've got off to a bad start.
I don't see us qualifying. I
I don't want to let myself get excited for it again because I've done that in the past and been let down. So I'd say at the end of this qualifying campaign, I think you can't really reward failure again. So I think it probably is time to go. You got Paul Lamberts out there. I think he'd be a good choice if we could get Michael O'Neill from Northern Ireland. That would be the ideal appointment.
Has anyone ever told you, by the way, Matt, you sound just like Jamie Murray? You know, Andy's brother.
Jamie... Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. It's not a bad thing. No, you've got a sort of slightly posh Scottish accent, I've got to say.
That's the most irrelevant observation we've had today on the show, Matt, but thank you very much for calling.
Let's talk to Patrick, who is, in fact, a Chelsea fan. I think he's driving to Manhattan as we speak. Patrick, a very good evening to you.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Yes, hello,
Where are you, Patrick, exactly?
You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, where are you?
Whereabouts are you?
I'm coming in over Queens Boulevard right now.
Queens Boulevard, very nice. Okay, and you're a Chelsea fan?
I'm a Chelsea fan. I'm just calling in with the Roy Hodgson getting the Crystal Palace job.
Yeah.
I believe he's getting it at the right time because I watched him against Burnley last week, and Crystal Palace could have won that game 3-1, 4-1, especially the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, they could have done, but they didn't.
He does turn the corner. They didn't, but I don't think you could blame the board for that result.
No, I agree. I think you're absolutely right.
Would you have stuck with De Boer then?
I do. I think he should have got at least one more game. I mean, that result, he did not deserve to get fired for that result. Scott Dan missed a goal on the mistake, that header.
He did. It was an open goal.
Well, he missed an absolute sitter.
He did, yeah.
I mean, even you and I would have scored that.
Exactly. All you should do is stand there, let the ball bounce off your head, and it's a goal, isn't it? Yeah. Absolutely. And Patrick, what do you do in Manhattan?
I'm actually just heading a friend over. I'm Irish, obviously. Emigrated here almost 3 years ago. So I have a buddy over from Ireland, and I'm heading in for some liquid refreshments.
Top man. Porky actually said to me today, we were in a bar up on, was it 7th Avenue yesterday? Yeah. We popped back in there today for one just early on lunchtime. And he said he's never seen so many Irish bars. And when we lived here back in the sort of 80s and 90s, there weren't so many. There seems to be one now on every block.
They're everywhere. It seems to be the trade to get into. We're going to maybe go down to the Dead Rabbit. Have you ever been down there?
The Red Robin?
The Dead Rabbit.
Oh, the Dead Rabbit.
Oh, the Dead Rabbit.
Where's that?
Is that the one down by the bottom of sort of 8th Avenue?
Yes. Very good bar. I was there.
I think I went in there with Steve Lillywhite last time I was in town.
Good.
I think I went in there with him. Great beer, great stuff. Listen, thank you very much indeed, Patrick. It's not a great line. We're going to let you go, but an amazing number of Irish bars. But also, we walked into one yesterday evening, if you remember, and they were watching the Arsenal game in the Europa League.
They were, indeed,
which was amazing because football has now taken over this country.
And of course, there's been a bit of a riot going on there while we've been away. Not a riot. 20,000 Cologne fans turn up because they're the most boisterous in Germany. They've just got back into Europe.
The kick-off was delayed, I think.
Kick-off was delayed because they're all trying to get into the ground and get into the home end. Yes. And in fact, our producer, one of our producers, our top producer, Izzy, was actually at that game.
Oh, was she?
She saw the terror, but it wasn't terror, really.
Oh, so she survived. She hadn't mentioned it to me.
No, well,
she didn't too much of an effect.
She talks to the best people.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, where were they when she talked to you?
Sorry?
Where were they when she talked to
you?
I'm
not going to rise to that sort of, pathetic little jibe.
That's fine. I'll tell some more stories about Porky staying off the booze, which, of course, he promised to do before the show, which is tomorrow. Yes. It didn't work.
It did.
Imagine there's no heaven. Sees if you try. Sky. Imagine all the
very pleased actually that we've got this song now played in its original form.
Yes.
So that the sort of the mangled version played by our friend up at Strawberry Fields earlier,
the toothless,
stuck in my head.
The toothless guitar player sitting on a bench and looking like a down and out.
Yes, absolutely right.
And desecrating really the sanctity of Strawberry Fields, the monument to John Lennon.
What we did do when we were up there was we recorded a little vignette.
We certainly did.
Which we're going to play out in a moment.
Yes.
Let me just read you this from Naomi in Sarasota. I'm delighted to say that Naomi did, in fact, manage to get herself back to the house in Sarasota shelter.
Excellent.
However, it was lots of power down, lots of trees down.
Yeah.
So they had to cancel coming up to the show tomorrow.
Oh, dear.
But she's promising to come to the Shepherd's Bush Christmas show.
Yes.
Which,
Lovely.
of course, is in December, which will be brilliant. So we'll look forward to seeing you there, Naomi. Thank you very much.
But we think her house was still there in one piece.
Oh, the house is in there in one piece. So,
okay,
so that's a blessing in many, many ways. So well done, Naomi. We're sorry we're not going to see you tomorrow.
Yes.
If anybody else wants to come, of course, just go to our website, the2mics.co.uk.
Yep.
Now, we were talking about Everton, and we have an Everton fan that we need to speak to, and we want to find out, apart from anything else, what sort of reception Wayne Rooney's going to get when he goes back to Man United. Who are we going to talk to?
Sorry, we're going to talk to Patrick, who's the Everton fan. He's on the line now. Patrick, good evening to you. Kevin, I'm sorry, Kevin. It's not Patrick. It's Kevin. Kevin, good evening to you.
Hiya, Porky. You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, sorry got your name wrong.
All right,
I know
mate.
you, Kevin.
Okay.
Yeah, very good indeed. So how are you feeling?
Down. Fed up.
Yeah.
No, what it is, good evening, Mike, as well.
Yes, nice to talk to you, man.
Yeah, what it is, Mike, Porky, there's a feeling going round that we've got too many players that are the same, but like you all want to play number 10 roles.
Yes.
And it's accommodating them. Also, Mike, we're crying out for pace. We've got no pace at all.
Yeah, I know.
And Neil Lennon's not getting a look in. Sorry, Aaron Lennon.
Yeah.
And Kevin Morales and Lukeman, he's just blanking them all together. But one of the rumours going down, Mike, is that under Roberto Martinez, the had the life of Riley, around Finch Farm with mobile phones, this, that and the other.
Yes.
And I don't know whether they've had the wings clipped and he's brought a strict disciplinarian in to sort everything out, and the players are rebelling now. Because when you've got the likes of Kevin Morales and Ross Barkley, who are unhappy at the club, and one of them especially coming out on social media, literally saying he was sad Everton never let him go to Olympiacos in Kevin Morales. That's frightening, Mike. You don't want that at your club.
No,
but what I'm pleading with Evertonians to do is don't jump on the bandwagon, Koeman out. It's not the Everton way. We've got 4 home games now. Sunderland in the Carabao, Bournemouth, Limassol in Europe, and Burnley in the league. Let's see what happens after them 4. And we'll take stock then. But all this jumping on, it doesn't do us no good at all.
Doesn't do us any good at all. Mr. Koeman is a good manager, and I think he's just got to find his way, if you see what I mean, after an exciting, but now what looks like a flawed, transfer campaign during the summer.
Well, I'm afraid
he's just got to get it right.
The jury's out, I'm afraid.
Is,
Kevin, thank you very much for your call. We'll take more calls on this coming up, of course, later on in the show.
Yeah.
But what I want you to hear now, Porky, is precisely what we did when we were up at Strawberry Fields a little bit earlier the day, as we were sort of watching the whole sort of the history, really, of John Lennon's home life, his terrible assassination,
and his death,
and our kind of reaction to it. Have a listen. So it's a bit crowded, isn't it?
You see what an industry it is.
Yeah.
All these coachloads of people coming to see John Lennon, or the memory of John Lennon. Yeah, did you say that you weren't over impressed with this?
Well, I just think it's a bit kind of mundane for John Lennon. I mean, he's a guy who was a very colourful man.
Yes.
With a very colourful imagination.
So would you have preferred, like a mosaic of his face, perhaps, or something like that?
Well, I just think something a bit more colourful. It's black and white.
Yeah.
It's mono.
It is, yeah.
Wouldn't you have put some colours in? Well, there's a guy playing some John Lennon songs.
That's right. Yeah. So why is this toothless sort of homeless guy over there playing beating up old guitar and playing a George Harrison song?
That's the only song he could learn.
At John Lennon's sort of resting place, for want of a better word. Because, of course, there never was a John Lennon resting place. The body was taken 24 hours after his death, cremated, and nobody ever knows what happened.
Nobody knows where the ashes were. Well, they're probably in an urn inside the apartment, aren't they?
I would think so, I don't know.
Because Yoko's still living in there, isn't she?
Yeah, she is, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it must be weird, though, if you're Yoko Ono, to come out and every single day see coachloads of people coming to this garden. I suppose that's what she wanted.
To pay homage to her dead husband, yeah. Well, I think she wanted a focal point for the memory, didn't she? And it would have been all over the place without this.
Yes, I suppose they'd all be standing outside the building,
all standing outside the building, or they might have been to the house he grew up in Liverpool or something like that, or maybe Aunt Mimi's place, the bungalow, and was it South Banks? No,
he's not getting any better, by the way.
Sandbanks. No, he's not. No, it's getting worse.
Juan Lennon.
I wonder how much he makes a day doing that. $2, eh?
Juan Lennon. That was the guy we were talking about earlier, who, as you say, was slightly unfortunately kind of toothless.
He was,
and a bit of a hobo. And maybe Lennon would have quite liked the fact. But it's ironic. It was ironic, as I say, that he did "Here Comes the Sun," George Harrison.
That's right.
Let It Be, Paul McCartney. And it wasn't until the third song that he actually did a version of Imagine.
When you've got no teeth, your repertoire's restricted.
Well, it might be.
You've got to sing songs with the word "the sun" in.
And he said,
Here comes Japan, here comes Japan, and I play.
I mean, the thing is, right, and he certainly didn't look as though he was a guy terribly familiar with music.
No, he didn't. No.
He looked as if he'd seen the main chants and gone. Somebody had gone. Some wino had said to him, "Hey, if you could learn how to play a Beatles song, man, you could go up there and make some money."
I totally agree.
To buy some more Thunderbird.
I totally agree. I was wandering through Chester once. There's a bloke there dressed up as Liam Gallagher and strummed his guitar.
Sure, it wasn't Liam Gallagher.
No, I don't think it was Liam Gallagher.
You could only tell it wasn't Liam Gallagher. He didn't have a go at you.
No, that's right. And he's strumming a guitar, singing, "Oh, Sally can wait, it's never too late." That's the only song he sung. But he sung it over and over again.
Absolutely shocking. Martin says this, out for an evening stroll in the Bronx, trying to stay off the Bladderation Trail before the show tomorrow, which is, of course, at the City Winery. Go to the twomikes.co.uk, buy a ticket, come and see us. It'll be great fun. It's all happening. This is Talk Sport.
Everybody's smoking, and no one's getting high. Everybody's flying, and never touch the sky. There's UFOs over New York, and I ain't too surprised.
This is Talk Sport. We are the Two Mikes, and of course there will be a podcast coming out, even though we're in New York, even though we're 3,000 miles away from where we normally are. That's not a problem. Now, we haven't seen any UFOs over in New York, but tomorrow night we might see quite a few weird things, because we'll have been obviously having done another show. We're doing the warm-up tomorrow.
We certainly
We're doing our live show in the afternoon.
We are.
After that, there's an after party.
There is.
So by this time tomorrow night, we might be seeing quite a lot of weird stuff flying around.
Well, things are going to be flying, but we won't be seeing anything weird, because we will be the essence of sobriety and non-bladderation.
Oh, OK. Well, if you say so. I'll tell you what I didn't know until today was that line, UFOs over New York. I didn't know that was in the song. I know the song quite well.
That's right.
But not being a sort of aficionado.
And Ain't You Surprised?
Yes.
And that really is John Lennon's New York song. If you listen to the lyrics, it's all about living in New York, you know, and the amazing things that happen here.
That wasn't on Double Fantasy, though, was it? It was before that, I think, wasn't it? Double Fantasy being his last album.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. It's a great song, and I only remember it's a single. It came out as a single in America, but not in Britain, I think. But it was described as a New York song and written in the Dakota. You know, that's why it's so much remembered as and
where we were today. Here. And by the way, if you go to Facebook or you go to Twitter, you will see some of the videos that we've been shooting throughout the course of the day. Well worth a look, I would say. Even if you're not getting into the streaming show that we're doing, or indeed coming to see us.
That's right.
But by all means, go and have a look at them. Right now, though, let's have a talk about what's going on the back pages tomorrow morning's papers, because Ralph Ellis is here from the Daily Mail.
Great.
And Wayne Rooney and Everton and the Manchester United game is all over the back pages, even though that game is not going on till Sunday.
That's right,
Ralph, a very good evening to you. Welcome.
Good evening, good morning here. It's just all is well with the world. Yeah, I mean, it's not really surprising that Wayne Rooney is all over the papers, because it's obviously a massive game, isn't it? But for both for him going back to Old Trafford, for Everton with the situation they're in. And got to say, Mike, I did rather think that would be your biggest concern, Everton, as we went into this weekend. And, you know,
it's a huge concern. It's a huge concern. When the fixture list came out, Ralph, right, I sort of licked my lips and said, well, that's a challenge, and we've got to rise to that challenge. So I went to the first three games. I went to Everton-Stoke, and I thought we sort of passing the ball sideways, but we got away with it with the Rooney goal. And then I went to City, and, you know, again, that was a controversial game, you know, two standings off, and again, Rooney scored. And then I went to Chelsea, and I realised that by the third game, actually, my fears that it wasn't working out were overcoming my fears that it was starting to develop. You see what I mean? And I'm afraid I've been proved right, haven't I?
Yeah, well, I mean, at the moment, it's obviously a very difficult situation and a lot of pressure on Ronald Koeman. And you know, whether he's helped himself by sort of criticising the players' attitude after the defeat in Atalanta, or whether that's a move to try and, you know, which from his point of view will hopefully sting a reaction from them. Obviously, we'll see on
Ralph,
Sunday.
He's accusing his players of not being tough enough, right? Now, hang on, they're only 5 games into the season. What was he telling them to do during pre-season training? Was he telling them not to be tough or to be soft? I mean, shouldn't the will of the manager be imbued into his players from the minute they kick off at the start of a new season? If they're not tough enough, it's because he hasn't told them to be tough enough, isn't it?
Well, you know, things happen in dressing rooms, don't they? And you know, you have days when the performance doesn't happen for whatever reason. Funnily enough, I mean, going through today's papers, that there's a lot in different papers on Gareth Barry, who, of course, will equal the Ryan Giggs' Premier League record when he plays for West Brom against West Ham today. And you know, I actually think he's one of the players that Everton missed more than anything, because in these situations, he was often the man that would hold their midfield together and win a tackle, play a pass. And, you know, around him, you know, obviously Lukaku is a big miss, isn't he? But I actually think Gareth Barry is a huge miss too. And as I say, around a number of the papers, there are some really nice tributes to him today.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're not the first person to say that, to be honest.
Well, we had a message earlier from somebody who was an Everton fan who said, actually, one of the biggest mistakes Koeman made was to let Gareth Barry go. But interestingly as well, Ralph, we had another caller, Kevin, I think it was, an Everton fan, who said, is this kind of disciplinarian method that Koeman has used kind of backfiring on him? Because, you know, people like Kevin Morales, people like, Barkley haven't really bought into it. And despite his sort of reputation as a tough guy, we have the Wayne Rooney situation, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, Wayne Rooney, I think, is long enough in the tooth and very experienced pro to the stage that he manages his own life, both for good and bad, you know, and most of the time he manages it for good, but obviously every now and then it goes for bad, and you know, but equally, I don't think you can fault Wayne, from games I've seen, I don't think you can fault Wayne Rooney's commitment and level of determination on the pitch. And I thought the other night in Atalanta, he was one of the few that couldn't be accused of not putting a shift in.
Maybe so. John, the back of the Telegraph, or on the front of the Telegraph Sport, we should say, they've got a headline that says, "You had it easy." Jose Mourinho's message to Rooney as he prepares for an emotional Old Trafford return. What does he mean by that?
Yeah, well, what he's saying is that in the early days of Rooney's time at Manchester United, where, you know, with the goals he scored on the way to set the record, Mourinho is saying it was a lot easier to score goals then that the Premier League wasn't as good as it is now. Well, that's an interesting argument, because a lot of people would tell you the standard of defending gets worse every year. So, but you know, Mourinho he's talking about whether Romelu Lukaku can ever break Wayne Rooney's record. Well, that's a big ask in the first place, obviously, because Lukaku's already 24, arriving at Manchester United, when Rooney was still in his teens when he got there. You know,
he was, but the other thing I'd say is, Ralph, that Wayne Rooney was never played really as an out-and-out striker for any consistent period of time. Managers thought he was such a good player, they'd sometimes want him to play number 10, or they'd want him to play a sort of head of a diamond behind the striker or something like that. Lukaku is an out-and-out striker. He will get a good 10 years at Manchester United to try and attack that record.
Well, if he stays fit, of course, that means he's got to stay fit and well till he's 34 if he's got 10 years, doesn't he? Which, you know, I mean, he may well do. Modern standards of fitness, he might very well do that. But that's basically what he's got to do, because he's got to get 25 goals a season for those 10 years to match Rooney's record. You know, I mean, the way he started, Lukaku, he could get more. I mean, the way he's going, where he's getting a goal a game at the moment, he could have it wrapped up in 5 years, never mind 10.
Yeah, but absolutely right.
He's, you know, the reality says that you know, nobody can keep that rate up for forever. But even so, you know, you know, I think Mourinho is one of those. Mourinho loves creating a side story, doesn't he, ahead of big games? And I would think that what he's saying about Rooney is one of those little efforts to sort of start a debate that's got nothing to do with Manchester United and Everton, which is what he loves to do.
Yeah, sure.
Apart from that whole scenario, Roy Hodgson's on the back of the Guardian Sport, and it says, Roy's return. Hodgson keen to look to the future as he lands at Palace. Unfortunately, there's a picture of him not looking great in a Crystal Palace outfit. And, I mean, the future looks as if it's the last thing on his mind.
Well, how much of a future has a 70-year-old man got?
Funnily enough, I think part of why he doesn't look so great is he's lost an awful lot of weight. And
Porky's in the same boat, by the way.
And it makes it, makes his face look a bit sort of gaunt and he says that the reason he's like that is while he's been out to work, he's got himself in the gym, got himself fit, and in the way he's expressed it to a couple of papers that he feels fitter at 70 than he did at 40. Whether managing Crystal Palace will keep him fit or be a big
sure, Ralph, he's not lost weight through the worry of how to spend the 14 million quid he extracted from the FA over the years he was their England boss.
Well, it looks as if he spent at least some of it on his gym membership, doesn't it?
Well, it does indeed,
where some of it's gone. Yeah, that's where some of it's gone.
Buy an awful lot of gym memberships for that.
Good to see him looking well, and it's going to be interesting how he gets on coming back into the Premier League because the job that's got to be done at Palace of getting them organised properly. Quite interesting. Sam Allardyce does a column in the Telegraph that he says that he's exactly the person that Palace need. That he will get them organised, do all the boring, repetitive work on the training ground, and the players will hate it, but that's what they need. Now, whether that is what works, we shall see. It's a big challenge to come back 5 years after you last managed in the Premier League.
Massive.
Well, it really is because everything's changed, everything's moved on.
I think it's beyond him. I think if he could
the other thing about that, if the Palace players, which they apparently did, felt that Ronald de Boer's training could be dull, well, wait till they get Roy.
Exactly. And he brings his cones out.
Remember listening to both the Fulham players and West Brom players grumbling away like mad about how dull it was. But in fairness, in both instances, it worked. They stopped scoring goals and had leaking goals rather than had relative success. So
I think we're right the first time. Stop scoring goals.
If something works, then players do buy into it. I mean, he took Fulham when all said and done. When he took over Fulham, they were as good as relegated already, and he ended up keeping them up and getting them in a Europa League final a year or two later. And obviously,
as you said, Ralph, that was a very
brief time at West Brom, but it was a long time ago.
It was a long time
ago.
It worked. Exactly. Ralph, thanks very much indeed. We've got to leave it there.
Ralph.
A couple of other stories which we'll get to later, Porky, about Cologne saying that Arsenal weren't ready for them to bring as many fans as they did. And also the Arsenal-Chelsea game goes ahead despite the fact that there was what is being described as a terrorist incident on the tube yesterday near Chelsea's football ground.
That's right.
We'll talk about that. That's on the front pages as well. Also, I've got one little plea for a good wishes message. Bought tickets for my British husband, Harry, to see you all tomorrow. Harry Roberts is his name. Says, Aisha, would you please give him a special happy birthday shout-out? Please.
I certainly will. Harry, happy birthday. Yeah. What an unfortunate name. Harry Roberts was also the name of a cop killer.
This is Talk Sport.
Rambling out of the Wild West, leaving the towns I love the best. Thought I'd seen some ups and downs till I come into New York town. People going down to the ground, buildings going up to the sky.
Wouldn't be fair if we didn't play a Bob Dylan song.
Well, absolutely.
The man who was, of course, not actually from New York, but he kind of epitomised New York City, didn't he?
That's right.
He came from Minneapolis, didn't he?
Came from Minneapolis.
Robert
but he
Zimmerman.
He ended up living in the north of New York State.
Yes.
And that's why they had the Woodstock Festival. Because they found out that Bob Dylan lived near Woodstock, right? The town of Woodstock.
That's right.
So they thought, I'll tell you what, we'll have a festival and Bob will hear the noise.
Yeah.
This is literally was their thinking. Bob will hear the noise over the back of his
They
garden
might have been
fence.
smoking too many of those funny cigarettes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, he'll be, invited to headline the show, and because it's in his the field behind his
backyard,
house,
he'll just come over,
Yeah, but he couldn't be bothered, so he didn't bother.
He just didn't do it. Now, I've got a tweet here from...
Well, when I say couldn't be bothered and being unkind, he just didn't want to appear, so he didn't.
Well, I mean, Bob Dylan is a law unto himself.
Of course he is,
He doesn't do anything unless Bob Dylan wants to do it.
Exactly,
I saw him at a place in Massachusetts, funnily enough, many years ago, when my daughter was only about 18 months old.
Right.
Tanglewood, I think it was called. And it's where the Boston Symphony Orchestra goes in the summer to go and play. So
a bit like a Glyndebourne.
It's like Glyndebourne, But they also put on occasionally rock stars. And amazingly, it was a friend of mine who was the tour manager for the Boston Symphony who got me tickets and said, do you want to come see Bob Dylan? I was like, absolutely.
Yeah, why not? It wasn't Rudgy, was it?
No, it wasn't. No, it was somebody I knew from a different world.
Right.
Anyway, Arctic Eddie has sent you the Paul McCartney poster, which I think you saw earlier.
Yeah, I did.
It won't be long. Night 1 at Madison Square Garden. Friday night, of course, which is right. So he's probably on stage right now.
That's right.
And we're on the radio.
We're on
but
the
he's
radio,
not going to be on stage tomorrow night.
No, he's not.
Because he wants to come and see our show, maybe.
Well, I hope he'll come and see our show. Talking about coming to see our show, by the way, Harry Roberts, I said that's an unfortunate name.
Killer,
Harry Roberts was a cop killer. He was a member of a gang who killed 3 policemen in Blackpool in 1966. He served nearly 50 years in prison. He was then released, and there were calls then to put him back in jail. Do you know why?
Why?
He went round selling pictures of himself, autographed for £100 to these nutters who, love criminals, the sort of people who go down to the Blind Beggar in East London with T-shirts on saying, I love the craze and all this kind of stuff.
You can't call people nutters, by the way. Did you not see that story about Poundland having to withdraw a series of sweets, which were nutty?
Oh, yes, that's right, because people
they were called
cross-eyed. Yes, that's right.
No, it was nothing to do with being cross-eyed.
It was. Honestly, the image showed them cross-eyed, and they said that's very unfair.
Yeah, I know, it was terribly unfair. Which, of course, it was. Anyway, listen, let's talk to Sandro Bonetti, who is our man in Hollywood. He's got his finger on the pulse, as well as many other things. Sandro, a very, very good evening to you, and welcome.
Well, hello, and don't think I don't know. It's no coincidence that your trip to New York coincides with Fashion Week in New York, because I know, as a very sartorial twosome, you'll have wanted to check out all the shows.
Well, what I can tell you, Sandro, is that our show is timed perfectly, because as Fashion Week ends and just before UN Week begins,
that's right,
and El Presidente, Donald Trump,
comes next week,
comes into town and shuts down the entire east side of Manhattan, we're here. And so, what better bridge from the Fashion Week people to the UN people could there be but us?
The two mics are the meat in a New York sandwich. I love it.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Yeah. That's a lovely way of putting it.
Now, I'm not going to tell you what we're going to get up to later on, but tell us, about some of the stories that are hitting the showbiz headlines. Apparently, today is the 1-year anniversary of Brad and Angelina's breakup. Now, I saw Angelina. I was watching Good Morning America this morning, would you believe? And I was amazed that, one, Good Morning America is still going as a show, and two, that anybody watches it, because it's so awful.
Yeah, it is dismal, but that seems to be the recipe that works for morning television.
That's true.
If it's good, that doesn't work. But yes, also tagging along on the press tour is 16-year-old adopted son Maddox. Angelina is promoting her new movie, First They Killed My Father, which is about how the Khmer Rouge, killed everyone in Cambodia. Big commercial favourite, obviously. Now, her 16-year-old Maddox is executive producer on this film.
Well, that's the best way to start in the movie. It's the best way to start in the movie business, isn't it? As executive producer,
means you don't do anything.
Well, it really is, and having a relative in the business also helps. So Maddox's movie career is underway. But yes, you correctly say it was 1 year ago today that there was some incident on a private plane that we still haven't got to the bottom of, involving Maddox and Brad Pitt, that led to the end of Brangelina. How quickly that all fell apart, and very bitter breakup between the two of them. Maddox has been giving his first interviews to promote the film. Hasn't said the words Brad and Pitt at any stage in any of these interviews, but has talked endlessly about how fantastic his mother is, and what great fun she is, and what a terrific filmmaker. So we will see. Brad, meanwhile, has been spending the last 21 days doing a sculpture.
Yeah. I was going to say, as far as the kind of Hollywood view of the world is concerned, who is perceived to have done better out of this breakup, Brad or Angelina?
Brad, very much so. There's been a kind of backlash about Angelina. Brad has very much come forward and given an interview in which he's confessed his weaknesses, his problems with the drinking. Maybe not being the best husband, and
vast amounts of money.
This up. So long as you give an interview in which you say you're flawed and you learn from your mistakes, everybody loves you. And Angelina has relied on the
cool pictures on the red carpet and not let people so much into her world. And that's been a backlash, and that's how the modern media works. So whoever's advising them, Brad's getting the better advice.
You're getting the better advice indeed. Now then, I think you're going to preview the TV Emmy Awards in LA this weekend, Sandro. What's the outcome of that going to be?
Well, it's going to be another triumph for Britain because, the very strong British contingent leading the nominations in the Emmy Awards, TV's top prizes. There's The Crown, Sherlock, Black Mirror among the great shows, and among the acting nominees, Claire Foy, Tandy Newton, David Thewlis, Benedict Cumberbatch, Ewan McGregor, Riz Ahmed.
Have they shown Dr. Foster there yet, Sandro? Have they shown Dr. Foster?
Dr. Foster, no. Dr. Foster has not made it to American TV, and there's not been an American remake yet. But surely,
damn disgrace!
Great show.
It's a brilliant show.
Well, hang on, you're kind of obsessed with this Dr. Foster show.
Well, it's a brilliant show.
I tried to watch the first series, which is now on Netflix. I couldn't stand it.
You couldn't?
Couldn't stand it.
Well, you're mad because it was a riveting, interpersonal type. Dilemma of the modern age, I think, that's the right thing to say, Sandro.
Now, I'm old enough to remember when Heather Locklear was...
It's a sign of how good television is that Dr. Foster doesn't get nominated because I'm sure we all agree TV is now better than movies, and therefore the Emmys are taking on an increasing significance, almost rivaling the Oscars as the biggest award show, because movie admissions this summer were at their lowest level since 2006. I mean, the numbers have just gone off the cliff, and when you consider how much cinema ticket prices have gone up in the last decade, that's a huge surprise. But
pretty quiet summer though in terms of good films.
Yeah, yes, that's true as well. Not enough quality, but all the quality is there on television. I mean, I couldn't pick who was going to be a winner. Westworld, Stranger Things, The Crown, This Is Us. And after that, there's about 25 other brilliant shows that didn't get nominated. And so it's a golden age of television, and the Emmys will reflect that.
Interesting. Talking about the golden age of television, I'm old enough to remember when Heather Locklear was a golden age of television type star, but she's apparently had a crash and put a Porsche into a ditch.
Yes, you're of course talking about the starlet from T.J. Hooker and Melrose Place. She's not made the headlines for a while, but she has with her bad driving because she's out in Los Angeles last night, managed to steer her Porsche into a ditch, and the cops show up and they give her the breath test, and she passes that. Drug test passes that. It's just a case of bad driving. Happily, she's okay after a night in hospital. The car is a write-off. No criminal charges. She's just got to sort it out with her insurance company. And what a nightmare that will be.
Well, of course it will be. You start ditching Porsches into ditches, so to speak. And it's not a good...
No, we're in New York.
Not a good driver's move.
It's not, as you know, Sandro. Now, unfortunately, I don't know whether it was just because we missed out on the timing, but Rihanna's had a party here, presumably as part of the old New York Fashion Week scenario. Beyonce was there, and we weren't.
Well, I guess you were just too famous to be on the guest list. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio was there, Jamie Foxx, Beyonce and Jay-Z making their first red carpet public appearance since the birth of their twins, Rumi and Sir. And this is something that Rihanna does now as the closing event of New York Fashion Week. She has this annual charity party, which raised over $1 million for her own foundation. Very sort of dressy, stylish event. And I can only presume that in the trip between England and New York, your invite must have got lost in the post because I didn't see you in all the paparazzi photos.
Well, exactly. It's a damn disgrace.
We can't be at everything. We've been very busy
all the time. Live shows in New York, man. We're on the radio. I mean, we got live streaming things to do. I mean, you can't do everything. These people shouldn't have expected us.
You can't party with Queen Bee, can you? You're just too busy. You had to give that one a miss. But Beyonce also took part in the hurricane relief effort. There was a big telethon on US TV this week, and she went back to her native Texas and was handing out food parcels. That must be something. I mean, you've lost your home, but you get to meet Beyonce. So,
there you go.
Well, I mean, I think you're being terribly cynical there, I'm afraid, Sandra. But listen, thank you very much indeed. We've got to let you go. We've got many, many things to do before the show is over in half an hour's time. Sandra Bonetti, our man, with his finger on the pulse of all things to do with celebrities. Yes. Now, coming up, we've got lots more to discuss. Yes. We're going to tell you exactly how you can see our live show tomorrow from the City Winery.
That's right.
Talk Sport.
As your TV reviewer, I can reveal there are no plans for a new series.
Yeah, no, but wasn't there a previous series?
Oh, hang on, wait a minute. It says here there might be a new series. What's your problem?
I must say I do laugh whenever I hear that.
Well, I don't know why, because it's just an artistic observation.
It is.
Yes.
It's true.
So
we were talking about Dr. Foster in that last section there with Sandra Bonetti. However, that music, for those of you who don't know, is all about the reason why, one of the many reasons why we listen to this show, because, of course, it's time for Porky Vision. The best TV review, I said earlier, this side of Kenny Bunkport.
Kenny Bunkport, which of course was the main holiday retreat of President Bush Senior.
That's right.
That's right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because, of course, even though that's the point. He's not a Texan.
No, he's not. He made his fortune in Texas.
From Texas, but actually they're all kind of Yaleys from New England.
They are, absolutely.
Yale being somebody who went to Yale University.
Yeah, exactly,
So there we are. Anyway, what do you got for us this week?
He was a World War II pilot as well. He was shot down during the Second World War.
Yes.
Right, what we got now then? We'll come to Dr. Foster in a minute, because that's a very interesting programme, and I have some observations on it. But my first observation is on Liar.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Liar and a really strange programme called Relic went out on the same night last week.
Now, I've heard good things about both of these shows.
Well, let me tell you, they were on opposite channels, BBC and ITV, at the same time, 9 o'clock, and they were written by the same writers.
Oh, really?
A pair of brothers who specialise in drama and have written other sorts of...
Sounds like they've cornered the market.
Yeah, they've cornered the market, and Relic is a really strange one. It's called Relic because it spells killer backwards.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the reason why they've done that is that it's a really weird format which you have to get your head around. It starts at the end of the mystery and goes back to the beginning. And that's why they've taken Killer and turned it round and called it Relic. You see what I mean?
Isn't that the way that Columbo used to work? And you used to say that Columbo worked very well because you knew who was a killer, but you wanted to see how Columbo figured it out.
Yes, but this is even more weird than that. What it does is it gets to the end where some nut's been going around throwing acid in people's faces, including a copper, including a very experienced policeman.
What, and the policeman got acid thrown in his face?
Got acid thrown in his face. So the first image you've got on this Relic is of a policeman with a very badly deformed face.
Yes.
And you haven't got any idea why he has. You assume... Do you remember the one that was the missing when the father burst into the burning shed and he got all burnt down one side? So you're assuming he's been in some sort of fire or something because they are burns.
Right.
But they're burns caused by an acid attack. A mad acid attack has been running around. And this copper obviously is very badly affected by the fact that, he's been attacked in this way. And it goes back to the start. But the problem is, it's not straightforward. They've turned round the title from Killer to Relic, and they say, well, that's because the show runs from back to front, and you get the back end first, and then it goes back. But
and it's over what sort of period of time are we talking about?
Months.
Okay.
Or maybe even just weeks, the time that this mad acid killer's running around. But the problem is that they don't just simply do it back to front. They stop after, half an hour of the first episode and then say 3 weeks on.
Okay.
Or 3 weeks back.
Yeah,
and so you're jumping all over the place.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
See, I don't mind it if they're in one direction. But
That's
if
right.
they start jumping backwards and forwards... there was something I watched, I can't remember what it was now, a few months ago.
Yes.
And they kept jumping about.
Yeah.
And I couldn't follow.
I know what that was. That was the one where they went out into the desert in Iraq to find boy whose father had been, a villain and all that.
Yes.
Yeah. And in the
was
end...
that not the missing as well?
No, that wasn't the missing. The missing was the girl in Scandinavia who was missing for 10 years. She's abducted.
Yeah, but wasn't there a second series, though?
No. Oh, was that the missing?
I think it was the missing. I think it was the second missing.
Yeah, I think it was because the army colonel, of course, was implicated in the end, wasn't he? Yeah,
he was.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
And I just couldn't work out what was coming first.
But anyway,
this
this one is so confusing that I had to give up halfway through the first episode because I thought, hang on, I've lost the plot here. So anyway, what I do then is, because I'm smarter than the average bear, I watched Liar on ITV +1, which came on at 10 o'clock. You see what I mean? So pretty clever.
No flies on you.
No flies on me. And I found Liar very entertaining. It's the girl...
That backwards, of course, is rail, isn't it?
Well, it would be but it's not back to front. This is straightforward.
To me.
Yeah, well, I know lots of things occur to you.
Yeah,
usually at the end of the bottom of a glass. That's when most things occur to you. But anyway, now this is Joanna, somebody who was Mr. Bates' wife in Downton Abbey.
Oh yes,
you know Mr. Bates,
yes, I know.
The butler.
Well, I saw an interview with her. He's the guy. She was the one accused of pushing the bloke who'd assaulted her.
Yeah, that's right, under the carriage.
Under a horse and carriage.
Yeah, and Bates himself was implicated in a murder and spent some time in prison before he was cleared.
But
and all
in the
this
end,
kind
neither
of stuff.
one of them had done it, right?
You know, he was supposed to have poisoned his own wife.
Yes.
No, Bates was supposed to have poisoned his own wife.
Was he?
He was. Yeah. And she was accused of throwing, somebody under a horse.
Throwing the guy who supposedly assaulted her.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Under a horse.
In revenge.
Yeah,
that's right. The guy who raped her, actually.
Well, I was trying to avoid that word. It's not
I'm afraid that's what it was.
Radio.
Anyway, so she is now a teacher, and she is courted by a doctor, a surgeon.
Oh, okay.
And the guy who plays the surgeon is Horatio Hornblower.
Horatio Hornblower?
Yeah.
That's not his real name.
Well, there was no Horatio Hornblower, but
it's a fictitious character.
Fictitious character written by some really distinguished author whose name I don't know.
Right.
Something like H.H. Borneo or something like that.
H.H. Borneo?
Yeah, something like that.
W.H. Auden, maybe?
No, not Auden. He was a poet.
He was a poet,
And it's a mad
Stop
plot.
all the clocks.
Because what happens is, this is a story about, a big, a man who's powerful in society. This guy's a surgeon.
Oh, yeah.
And he's divorced. And he asks this teacher out for a date.
Yes.
But the weirdest thing is that the teacher's sister works with the surgeon doctor.
Okay.
So the surgeon...
as his receptionist or something?
No, she's a nurse. She's a nurse.
Ah.
So the surgeon doctor works closely with this woman who's got a sister who is Joanne from Downton.
Right.
And
Joanne Froggatt, it says here.
Yeah, Joanne Froggatt, that's the one.
It's Ewan Griffith who's in it.
Yeah, Ewan Griffith, yeah.
He's a Welsh guy. I used to know him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I used to go to rugby games
That's right, yeah. Well, he was big at one time.
He was in
Horatio.
Titanic.
He's in Titanic, but in a sort of passing role. Nobody really noticed him in that.
Well, no, he was one of the officers on the ship trying to get people into the boats.
That's right, he was, yeah. But anyway, the point of the story is, and I'm trying to tell you, is that...
We've got plenty of time.
Is that the doctor takes her out on a date, and then it all becomes a bit hazy. He goes back for a coffee, and his batteries run down on his phone, so he can't ring a taxi and all this kind of stuff.
So he stays the night.
Well, this is what's unclear, because the plot is this. She reports him to the police for rape.
Yeah.
She then confides in her sister.
Right.
You'd think that this guy's working with a sister. He wouldn't go around, allegedly raping his workmate's sister. You know what I mean?
Well, you don't know, do you?
Well, you'd think not. But anyway,
so it's a sort of it's a parable of our times, isn't it?
It's a parable of our times. Now, she alleges, because her sister is a nurse, obviously, that the doctor knows a lot about medicines and has put that Rubenthol drug, you know the one I'm talking about? It's called Rubenthol, isn't it?
Is it?
The drug that you drop it into women's drinks. Horribly.
It's Rohypnol.
Rohypnol, that's the one.
It's not Rubenstein.
Well, it's whatever.
That was the guy that used to be Rupert Murdoch's PR man. Howard Rubenstein.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I don't think he could convince
All right. Well, Rubenthol. Rohypnol is put into, allegedly, into a woman's drink. That then renders her unable and incapable of resisting an attack by a man.
Yes.
And the allegation
it more or less knocks him out, doesn't it?
Well, no, I think it just paralyses your reflexes and your actions. You know what's going on, but you can't do anything about it.
Okay.
So she alleges this. The police take it very seriously. They go into an operating theatre, arrest the guy, who's a top surgeon.
Okay.
But he's got a perfectly plausible story about when she invited me in.
Yes.
We had coffee and we had wine, and then... the terrible details about going to the bathroom to find...
they had sex.
No, he's not.
Saying that it wasn't consensual. He said it was consensual.
He said it was consensual.
Yes.
She's... and this is going to, get mad, this. It's a 6-part series, and she's going to become demonic and mad to try and prove that this man
and this one...
her.
Forgive me for asking you the question, is in the right order?
It's in the right order.
It doesn't go backwards.
No, it's in the right order.
Okay.
But there's so many flaws to the plot already. How could this guy possibly do that to the sister of a nurse he works with, right? But secondly, he suddenly turns up at her school and says, "What have you accused me of, attacking you for? I didn't." And she says, "Go away, leave me alone."
Because I've seen the adverts for it, where she's shouting down the phone at him, you've got to come to terms with what you've done.
Yes, that's
and he says, "I haven't done anything."
Yeah, that's right, I haven't done anything like that and stuff. So I'm afraid that's losing a bit of credibility as well, because I see this as a long, drawn-out moral tale.
Yes.
Of relationships, and she said this and he said that, and nobody will ever know.
No.
Nobody will ever know whether it was consensual or not.
But in some ways, that's why
they've not found any drug, because he's a doctor and it can disappear out of your bloodstream in 12 hours.
Oh, really?
So there's no evidence there.
But in many ways, that's why it's fascinating a lot of people, because it's like a lot of court cases where you never really know.
You are the jury, in fact.
A judge has to decide, a jury might have to decide, but in the end, if you're not in the room, you don't know what happened.
The viewer is the jury.
Yeah.
But one really strange thing is that when they have the wine at home, right, she says to him, "There's the wine and there's the glasses," and she goes and sort of, changes into something or whatever, or takes her coat off.
Okay.
Comes back and he has poured the wine, but then she gets up to leave the table again, comes back, and he is quite obviously drinking her wine because there's lipstick on the glass he's drinking from.
Oh, right.
So that's the assumption.
A bit odd, isn't it?
Well, the assumption then is that he's actually doctored his own wine and passed it to her or something, or why is he drinking her wine? Has he put the ribohypnol in
the rohypnol
into the wrong glass or something like that? So this will run. This will run.
I'm sure.
Will run. Yeah, okay.
Fascinating. So that's Liar and Relic.
Yeah, and that's for Dr. Foster. Well, she's gone mad.
Yeah.
She's going out into town at night, going into nightclubs, right, dancing like a teenager, then meeting a man late at night, not having sex with him, but then he comes back the next morning for breakfast and gets his oats, if you see what I mean.
That's very well put.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Porky Vision.
It was, yeah.
We are the two mics.
We are.
Write it all out like a bird in the sky. Was write it all out like you were a bird. Fly it all out like an eagle in a sunbeam. Write it all out like you were a bird.
The Damned are heading on a nationwide tour in early 2018, and TalkSport have a pair of tickets to give away for a date of your choice. The punk legends are hitting the road with their huge catalogue of hits, including New Rose, Eloise, and Neat, Neat, Neat. Head to the AEG Presents website now to get your tickets. To win a pair of tickets to a show of your choice, just head to talksport.com/win.
Absolutely right, yeah. Now then, we're playing Mark Bolan here.
That's right.
And I'm not going to call it Mark Bolan and T-Rex.
No.
Because when he made this one, Ride-O-Eyed Swan, there's still Tyrannosaurus
That's right,
Rex.
with Mickey Finn.
With Mickey Finn on the congas.
Yeah,
not the bongos.
And all that,
yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, well, apparently, according to a tweet we got about an hour or so ago, and I haven't got it in front of me, so I'm sorry I can't give you credit, it was 40 years ago today that Mark Bolan was killed.
That's shocking, isn't it?
In Barnes, right?
Yeah, he was in the passenger seat of his girlfriend's car.
Yeah.
She ran into a tree. He was killed, she wasn't. But if you pass that tree to this day, you will find bunches of flowers scattered all around. It's still a memorial to the life and the death, sadly, of Mark Bolan, who was in his 20s. He might have been one of the 27 club,
Yeah,
I'm not
I don't
sure.
think he was 27, but he wasn't far off it.
Yeah,
he's certainly not part of that.
Yeah.
A couple of tweets to read out to you. Jason says, "You two old relics are killing me. Brilliant Porky Vision."
Yeah, well, it was, wasn't it? I thought it was a particularly good Porky
I thought it
Vision
wasn't
today.
bad.
I thought it was, the amount of effort I'd put into watching those things when we had so many things looming.
Well, we
the
do
trip
have a
to
lot
New
going
York
on.
and all that kind
That's
of stuff.
right. And
Now,
speaking of which, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say a great one here from Ollie.
Yeah.
He says, "Hey guys, now you're in New York, have you invited Bobcat Bob? Is Bobcat Bob coming to the show? Are you going to say to him from the stage, 'I got you now, boy'?"
Well, of course, Bobcat Bob is not unfortunately on this side of the country. He's in Los Angeles, where he's now the manager of the new Los Angeles franchise team. But how about this one from Danny, who's come over to watch the show? He says, "Do you happen to know any decent bars around Broadway, Times Square, MG? Time for some Blado in Modo here."
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, Danny, it's
plenty
not
of them.
an area that I know terribly well.
No.
However, there's lots of really, really good Irish bars that you can find around that area.
Yes.
And many of them have got sport on as well. They're kind of sports bars.
Have.
And it's, to be honest, very difficult to find a terribly bad bar anywhere in Manhattan.
Of course it is.
Although it has gone up a bit since we were last here together. The price of drinking.
Oh, blimey. It's $8 a pint of lager now, and that's quite expensive. Now, talking about Broadway, by the way, we did have reason to have to blush and move on yesterday when we were on Broadway.
That's true.
And that's because there is a new phenomenon in New York. You get them all over, every time you come to New York, something new amazes you. And these young ladies... stand around on Broadway. They have very little clothing on indeed.
Well, in fact, they've only really got some quite small bikini bottoms.
Yes,
on,
that's right. Just say, it's a nice way of putting it. Bikini bottom. I was going to say briefs. A pair of briefs on. And then they paint their upper body with body paint.
That's right.
And they're shapely ladies.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, all these sort of guys who think that they're very attractive and what a New York thing this is, stand alongside them, have their picture taken, these ladies, for $10.
Right.
And I find it very seedy and very, downbeat and exploitative.
It should be said, by the way, that we did not have our pictures taken with them.
Of course not, and we would not didn't want them in the shots when we were doing some work down there. But
it all stems from the singing cowboy. There's a guy called the Singing Cowboy.
I was about to say, I'd never seen him, and then today I just walked up to Broadway and then got a cab down here, down past the Garden, where Paul McCartney's playing tonight, obviously.
Are you going to pop in on the way home?
Well, I'm going to see what's going on.
Because, it's only here, of course, it's only coming up to 5 to 8.
Yeah, that's right. It won't have started yet.
Well, he might not be on stage yet.
He won't be
might
on
be able
stage
to get in and, he's probably not sold out.
No, well, I'm going to go and have a look on the way back.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say is, today I see the Singing Cowboy. Now, the Singing Cowboy, I didn't know was as famous as he is, but I saw him for the first time today. This is a guy who prides himself on having a well-developed muscular body.
He does.
He has long blonde hair.
Yeah.
He has a guitar which covers his midriff.
I don't think he's naked though. I think he wears briefs.
He does. He wears briefs, but I mean, to all intents and purposes, he's naked because his guitar covers his midriff.
You mean it looks like he's naked?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he's only got a pair of cowboy boots on.
Yes, but he didn't have a hat as well.
He didn't have a hat when I saw him today.
Speaking of which, you told me you were going to buy a hat today.
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
because it was so hot as we were walking around.
In the end, I didn't.
Well, we should get you one tomorrow.
I might get one.
Suffer from heat
I found
stroke.
one in the lobby of our hotel, so if I need one, I can get one before I go out tomorrow.
One? What, you mean somebody else's hat?
No. I saw in the shop in the lobby of the hotel. There's some hats.
Oh, right, okay.
I might get one tomorrow.
All right.
But anyway, the point of the story is... I actually saw, I couldn't believe it, a young lady walk up to the cowboy today. What's his name?
He's known as the Singing Cowboy.
It's the Singing Cowboy at Broadway. And she posed and had a picture taken with him. And
did she have to give him $10?
Yeah, she handed over $10.
Really?
And so, I mean, supposing this guy gets his picture taken with maybe, I don't know, in a day, 30, 40 ladies.
Yeah.
That's $300 or $400.
Not bad.
Standing around on Broadway holding a guitar, which he can't play apparently, and pretending he's a singing cowboy.
Right.
It's not bad.
Now, apparently, according to what I've looked up here, he is a guy who's modelling himself on Gene Autry.
Oh, Gene Autry.
Who was a singing cowboy back in the 1930s.
Gene Autry, was he the guy who was a war hero? And came out of the war with about like 8 sort of Purple Hearts or something.
Well, I think he was in some films before the war.
Great American award.
Well, the Purple Heart is like the George Cross.
Yeah, no, it's like the Victoria Cross.
The Victoria Cross,
That's right, yeah. In fact, Rambo had a couple of Purple Hearts, didn't he?
Rambo's not a real person.
No, I know he's not. But,
so you can't count him.
No, I know you can't. But when the Colonel turned up at the tent of the police chief, and the police chief said...
You mean in First Blood, the first movie?
First Blood. Yeah. Who the hell are we dealing with here?
Yeah.
And Chelmsford says, "You're dealing with my boy."
Yeah.
Well, who is he? What is
this maniac? Richard Kramer, wasn't it?
Richard Kramer, yeah.
He's a great actor.
That's right, yeah.
Tremendous.
Who's this maniac? He ain't a maniac. He's probably the world's greatest expert in survival in jungle conditions,
Now, somebody who was known as singing cowboy for 3 decades, beginning in the 1930s, maybe that was Gene Autry, but now the guy that does it is, I think, a guy called Gary McMahon.
Oh, yeah.
Or McMahon.
Yes, McMahon.
Who's known as the singing cowboy.
Right, okay.
Why would you pay somebody £10 for a picture?
I've no idea.
I'm amazed that you haven't actually come up with some kind of similar scheme.
What? Have your picture taken with Porky?
With you, yeah.
That's not a bad idea. I'll stand outside the hotel tomorrow morning. That's if they want a picture taken with me.
Because a lot of people will be wanting pictures taken tomorrow.
Yes.
Because don't forget, after the show, I guess we can say this. We can say it on the show tomorrow because we're also back in this lovely studio here, beautiful studio, here in heart of Manhattan.
That's right.
We're going to be back here at 11 a.m. London time.
We are.
Which, of course, is what? 6 a.m. New York time.
That's right, indeed.
We're up early to do the warm-up.
That's right.
Just before we do the live show in the afternoon.
That's right.
At the City Winery.
That's
right. But after that, we're going to another bar, which is up on 44th between 2nd and 3rd, where Costello's used to be.
That's right.
where they've got a wonderful picture actually of Marilyn Monroe when she was at Costello's.
I know.
Used to be our watering hole when we were here as journos in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, when you say used to be where Costello's used to be, I mean, the building was Costello's, and it is now...
Well, it's now called the Overlook Bar.
The Overlook Bar, that's right, yeah. We're going to the second floor, which Costello's never had.
Is it not is it the second floor in America?
It is, isn't it? It's first and second, isn't it? Yeah.
It's the first America. In England, it would be the first floor.
The first floor, and in America, it's the second floor.
So you've already slipped back into the American ways.
We certainly have, American way of life. We'll be calling ZZ soon. But anyway, look, anybody who wants to watch a living room back home in Britain, even though we're 3,000 miles away, and performing at the Winery in New York City tomorrow.
Indeed. And also just check the City Winery's website as well.
Yes.
Lyle says this. He's known as the Naked Cowboy. And then he says, see you mañana.
See you mañana. What's that mean?
Which, of course, is, tomorrow. Mañana is Spanish.
Mañana. Mañana is the Italian for sort of not now, tomorrow.
No, it's Spanish.
Oh, Spanish. It's Spanish for not now.
Or possibly Mexican.
Mexican, because they all like having siestas in the middle of the day. And I don't blame them.
I like that too.
That I've been working in today.
Did you have a siesta today?
No, I didn't, no. Did quite cruel to have me working at 80 degrees of temperature in Central
Well, you're saying I'm
today.
cruel. So I'm cruel now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I'm saying you are a bit. Now, Martin sends us a note, and he's got a picture. I don't know why, but he's got a picture of a load of cans of beer, Coors Light. Not the strongest booze in the world. But
the beers are available, of course.
And he says, couldn't resist a little bladdo in motto, chaps. Listening to the last hour, roll on the winery. So I think Martin is going to be a guest at the winery tomorrow.
That's very good.
Which is rather nice.
I'm very glad to hear it.
Yes.
Now, we're pretty much out of here now. It's been an absolute pleasure working here with you, Mr. Parry. We're going to be up very early in the morning. I've got to go and do a little bit of hobnobbing with members of my family.
Yeah, well, you should do.
But I will be going to bed early.
Yes.
Because we've got to be back exactly here at around about 5 o'clock in the morning.
We have, yeah.
Five
right
or
now,
thereafter. That is approximately 9 hours from now.
Yeah,
and I've got to get some sleep in as well.
Say a big thank you to Paul, our producer.
Absolutely right.
Our tech op here.
He's done a tremendous job.
Who's going to be back with us in the morning. Paul, thank you very much.
Well, hopefully he is. As long as we haven't upset him to the point where he doesn't want to come back and do another show.
Much. But he's our stateside producer. Yeah. Is he, of course, on the other side, back in London?
Indeed.
Done another great job.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Don't forget, you can download our podcast on the Two Mics, of course. Look out for all the Twitter action and the Facebook action. This has been Talk Sport. We are the Two Mics.